Oh no, they were going to break.
When you left, Eric, what's his name, Mark, did the break, and then that's when you guys took over.
Yeah, Peter had just finished speaking.
We left.
We left then.
Just to see what
Of course, it's after midnight, right? It is actually exactly midnight.
Yep. There you go. I can't have that on, obviously.
Oh,
But we're live.
very cool.
Hey, YouTube.
Hey, us.
We're just going to wait for some people to come on in.
Yep.
Let's hope. Build a good following today, anyway.
Yeah.
A lot of people. And you know what? I should have put that off on the P&K channel to let them know that we're going to do a live video here. I'm going to go live and say we're live on Mark's channel right now. How about that? If I know where my phone is. What's up to the three? All right, we're starting to game people now.
Yeah, I like it. Now, let's pop that off so I can see the chat. See
Yep.
what's going on there.
Guys, chat is wide open if you want to ask Mark any questions. I'm just here as a side tool. Welcome to Mark's channel. Mark, take it away. It's yours, buddy.
Keith and I are over in Pine Bush having a great time. We just attended and cleaned up at the Pine Bush UFO Festival and Fair. It was a great time. We had an awesome group of people to do a presentation for today. And we presented at the little disabled veterans place. And I think that it was really nice because we had a good time talking over there. We had a good time interacting with people. We met a bunch of new people, and it was a great deal of fun. So I'm really glad that you're joining us. Nice to see you guys. I see a number of people out there. There's Starseed and Deidre, and we got Stoner. I know who you are, and Sherry K. That's nice to see you guys. We're still in Pine Bush. We're over at Billapalooza here at Bill's house. And we're broadcasting live here. This is the live sky. And we're actually trying to... we're doing a little more work. Trying to get some of the technical issues worked out. But this is not the live stream that I'm talking about. We're not talking about this as a... live stream, for instance, that we would be doing in the John Zach Memorial Observatory. All right, this is just a wide Skyview live stream for now, but it's a great preview and a good time to talk about what we're going to do in the other stream when we get moving. So I think it's a great idea. So I'm hoping that this will be the start of something great, and the more people that join us, the better. And I'm hopeful that you guys will be very, very amenable to coming back time and again, because we're going to be exploring different places in the night sky, but not on wide angle like here. We're going to actually be using the telescope in the observatory, the computer-controlled system. It's actually going to steer the various objects. And then we will use the camera and be able to actually zoom in and look at objects up close. And if you can't see them, we can right then and there, take a photograph and then see what the result of the photograph is immediately, right there in the camera. And you will see it as I see it. So this is what's cool about this. It's sort of never been done. Now, I do belong to a number of remote observatories around the world, and I take pictures sometimes nightly using telescopes in Chile, in the Canary Islands, and it used to be Australia, but they shut that one down, unfortunately. Probably too many kangaroos. But the bottom line is we're having a good time with this observatory, and I'm working on getting a lot of automation gear up and running. And I'm hopeful that as we move forward, that we will be able to actually, show you some different nightly views. I know we can, and once I actually calibrated the telescope last night, and I made some really interesting changes to the mount so that we would actually be able to get better accuracy. I actually trained the drives, it's called. I trained my drives to make sure that we're actually getting proper response. Because, a drive is just a mechanical device on a telescope to follow the rotation of the Earth. It's not perfect. It's not perfect. It will have errors. It will lead and lag depending on what's going on. So, it's not going to be the best thing. But I think that by training the drives, we're going to get a lot out of it, and we're actually going to make sure that it's very accurate. you know, and Keith has a few things to say, I'm sure. And Keith is here with me at Pine Bush.
I just have one question. I want to know, guys in the chat, can you hear the outside microphone by any chance? I'm just wondering because I see it coming up on the video capture device. So I just wanted to make sure that there's not an open mic outside. Let me know in the chat if you can hear outside anything besides myself or Mark. And if so, I can fix that. If so, I just want to make sure it's not interfering.
So good to see you, Shane. I'm glad you found us. That's awesome. If anybody's interested, Shane in the chat, and Shane, I think you pronounce your name Sirway, right? Yeah, let me know. Shane is really amazing. He's an amazing researcher in both the paranormal, and he's also part Native American, which is really impressive. As I am too. My mother was Native American, and so we kind of have we kind of have a really interesting interaction, Shane and I. So we see the world in a similar light, especially from our native roots. So it's pretty cool. And I view the night sky a little differently because I'm in science, and Shane's science is a little bit different. But it's too bad he couldn't join us right now because I would love to have him tell you all about that. But that'll come in time. We'll figure out how to get people in.
That's going to be a big part of your channel too. You'll be able to get a lot of guests in if you want to.
I want to have people like Shane on board to talk to folks and tell them some of the investigations he's been working on, because he never stops. He never stops, just like I never stop, just like you never stop.
Oh, I stopped.
Look at the time. I mean, it's after midnight. We haven't stopped. You haven't stopped. You're not going to stop anytime soon.
And we have to thank our wonderful host Bill, who's been just
we don't have to, but we're
above
going to.
and beyond.
We don't have to, but we're
above
going
and
to.
beyond.
All right. So it's amazing, that we finally got all this up and running. We wanted to have a regular, sort of a regular P&K Skywatch tonight too, but Paul, the P in P&K, had to go back home. He had to go back to Miami, and Keith though was left behind. So he's still here.
That's me.
That's it. And so unfortunately, Keith is still here.
Yep.
For all involved. Nobody wants him here. They all want him to leave.
Hey, I tried, man.
Yeah, you see, but it's the way it goes, and it's okay.
Yep.
It's all right. So Keith, tell me what your impressions were of the Pine Bush conference today. I thought it was kind of fun.
Being somebody from the outside that wasn't necessarily at the Pine Bush UFO Festival for UFOs, once again, the main reason I came up is to meet Mark in person, check that out, go to his house, and of course meet a whole bunch of people I've always heard about, including everybody knows Heidi, and but my impression of the actual UFO fair itself. Different. I would say definitely family oriented up here. Very good lineup of speakers. Could have been a little bit more organized, if I'm being nice.
That is nice.
When it comes to the speakers and how stuff goes down. But besides that, eye-opening is probably the way I'll put it, about how some of the stuff works.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, I had to speak today, so I was thinking, all the challenges I face, because whenever I go out and I go speaking, there's a certain set of things that have to be in place. And some of it was there, some of it wasn't. Mm-hmm. The display screen in the hall where the talk was shown was a tiny little regular film screen like you'd set up in your living room to show your 4 children a couple of 8mm
and those that
videos.
Watch the live stream, what we tried to do was actually live stream that on Mark's channel, and I think we did a pretty good job until that one guy the one guy came in late to the lecture and decided just to plop down right in front of the camera, so you see me kind of moving it over to try to get trying to get it like past him, and I think I did pretty good, but I think the sound's pretty good. The video came off pretty good, except for that guy back, and I think he was picking his nose at one time or other. I'm not exactly positive, but that's also, and I would love personally myself to see more of that on your channel. Like somehow, if there's a way that you could work it where you do these speaking engagements, if it's possible, if they don't have some kind of thing where they're big video rights or something like that, where you would be able to live stream all your talks. I'm more than positive that a lot of these people, including your regulars in the chat, the guys that become real big fans, including Tana and Rockstar and Amanda and Arnie and Jay and Ian, sure. All those guys, I know I'd be watching them, And I
have to admit, when I think about it, I think about the fact that this material, the stuff that I talk about when I do a presentation, that belongs to me.
Mm-hmm.
So if I want to stream it, I really shouldn't.
You need their permission to
think
do
it was a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Dave, he writes, he thought I was cut off at the end when I wanted to ask about
was.
to answer questions.
I'll
I
answer
was.
that for him. He was.
I absolutely was. And that's part of the problem of the organization of a thing like this. And that's an issue for me. But I'm all right with that. I mean, I've been doing these so many years that you have to kind of roll with the punches, and it doesn't matter. You get punched a few times, well, you get back up, don't you? And that's exactly what happens. I've been punched a few times, and figuratively and actually in reality at a UFO conference. I was in Las Vegas. I told Keith about this, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually talking about the Tether Incident, and I was explaining it because I know why it happened. The Tether Incident was one of the shuttle missions where they released a tether on the end of a little satellite, and what they were trying to do was to find out if there could be current generated along that tether to for purposes of a science experiment. Well, the tether broke. They underestimated the strength and so forth for whatever reason. There are a lot of reasons why it broke, but the bottom line is that tether ended up 90 miles away from the space shuttle at the time. And when it broke, it showered the area around the shuttle with tons of tethered debris. And that debris were little tiny particles, and they were all floating around. And when the camera focused on the tether, the particles close in, the particles close in were actually rather, the particles were rather big, and they were out of focus. And that made them look like they were giant, but it also reduced their intensity. And the tether was very bright white. In fact, it was so bright, it was the maximum level that the camera could deal with. So anything that passed in front of the tether, like debris up close to the camera, would look like it's going behind the tether. And that's how that happened. Now, for a National Geographic special, they flew me to Dallas, and I actually recreated the Tether Incident in the studio and had the cameraman follow my instructions to zoom out and focus on the particles that were right close to the camera that I had made, and then focus on the tether. And you would see that these particles out of focus were round blobs that were just as brightly lit as the tether, but when they were out of focus, they looked dimmer to the camera. That's what's important. And so when they went in front of the very bright, thin line of the tether, they appeared to go behind it. That's the illusion that incident created, and it caused such a firestorm that it was crazy. Anyway, I just thought it was kind of crazy, that something like that could get misinterpreted that way. But this is what I deal with, and basically you just have to roll with the punches. And the way that I ended up in a near fight with a guy was in Las Vegas when I told all people about this. This particular guy was actually using that Tether Incident as a major funding vehicle to get people to go out on his skywatches.
And he's not the only one either.
No.
There's a couple of them doing it.
Yeah, and he didn't like it. And because I immediately shut down his business right there in front of 800 people in the audience. And he was really, really upset with me. And afterwards, he charged out, came right at me with his fist out, and he was ready to take a swing at me. Now, I've had some training. I mean, I've done martial arts for many years, and so I just immediately kind of just sort of went into a defensive posture that would mitigate any, it may not stop the damage from occurring, but it would mitigate me getting damaged, seriously and hurt. And luckily he blinked, and I didn't have to, confront him any further. I told him, I just said, look, that's not going to be a good idea. I recognize you're upset, but I'm merely telling the facts, and that's the truth right now. If you don't like it, I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. And he grumbled and went away, but it didn't stop him from being angry. And in fact, he ended up getting in a fight with someone later, and he got arrested and ejected from the conference, for life. So, I mean, that's the risk I run, and the risk anyone runs when they actually are, quote unquote, telling the truth.
But I mean, that in itself is just amazing that somebody would get that passionate knowing that they're in the wrong.
Yeah, I like that passion, though.
I like the passion,
but passionate.
Most people don't get that passionate, and you can tell it had to be a money-based thing, because you don't get that passionate when you know you're intentionally wrong.
Well, there's that.
So
Yeah.
the only other thing that you can really have to get mad about is this guy's, taking away my income,
Yeah.
by reviewing this. But
That's true.
That's nutty.
And I suppose that's what I did.
yeah,
and
it has
so
to be done.
From that point of view, I could get it. I understand that.
And I did I tell you the other night, well, not the other night, probably about a week or two ago now, when we were on the P&K channel, the next day we got a comment from somebody that really did not like us going in on Mr. Greer.
Oh, really?
And I found it funny that, they said, well, I don't know how you guys can talk like that about your colleagues. And I'm like, well, saying colleague is a pretty far stretch.
Yeah, that's a stretch for Stephen Greer.
Yeah. I don't have anything personally against Stephen Greer. I'd say, how do I put this?
Say it any way you like.
Yeah. It's not. I think he has went down the road of charlatan, over time. Put it that way. I think his initial intentions were good. I think he was, wanting to help it. But as soon as you got a sniff of the money, and then he started charging people to come out and sit Indian style with him in the middle of the desert, for massive amounts of money.
That's quite. That's actually, in my view, I agree with you.
Yeah, and it does. A lot of the money really, gets to people's heads, and you can tell the difference between the ones that have passion for it and the ones that are now doing it to sustain their way of living. Put it that way.
Yeah. And
Greer just comes off to me. You got a known channel, a UFO channel in.
Right.
Secure Team, which entertainment, which is fine. A lot of people like Secure Team 10. They like what they do. Fine, have it as an entertainment channel. But now, when you're trying to be a legitimate UFO researcher, and now it's totally obvious that the only reason you're teaming up with this channel is to get more people to buy your movie, where you're hiding behind getting the disclosure out. When really, in reality, it hasn't. It irks me the wrong way, and I'm not sure if you're the same page. But
I'm with you on that because I don't even mention those channels, and
sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I understand, but I don't mention them because I view them as hoaxers for money.
Yeah.
And they're taking people that are gullible and they're throwing at them things that they've invented and fabricated. Mm-hmm. Much of the work they do, I do.
Yeah.
And I've actually been asked for productions to either create a live hoax event or to create a computer-generated hoax event. I've done both kinds. Why did I do it at all? I did it under contract to make sure, and that's my contract, to say that if I do that, I must be allowed to reveal it in the same program and make sure that people understand this is how I did it. I think that's a good idea. And so I did that. For National Geographic, I did this drone over a busy mall in Connecticut, and people saw this thing in the middle of February flying around, and we put these very bright blue LED lights on it, and it happened to be a light snow at the time. So when we took off, it looked like a blue sphere outside of a ring of lights. It was stunning. It was really pretty, and people saw it flying around, and they didn't know what it was. And a number of people, even some here at Pine Bush, said, "I saw that thing. I thought it was real. I said I got to take a picture of it." But then, when I landed it, I gave the whole secret away and said, "No, this is what it is. This is a drone created in 24 hours."
My favorite one was, I believe it was Austin, Texas, and this thing went viral. This thing had 16 lights around it. And these people were like, "It's a UFO." The news was covering it. What was this? What was this? And Mark comes in out of nowhere and goes, "Hey guys, it's the street light." In Austin, Texas, they have these weird street lights that have, I think it was 16 or maybe it was 8. I'm not sure, but they're very distinct.
A ring of lights that they hoist way up high in the sky on these very tall poles.
Yep.
And the weather conditions were just so that you didn't see the pole.
And when you moved it around, it actually did look like it was in there in its own kind of. It was just the way the lights are down there. It made perfect sense. And Mark just came on and just blew everybody's bubble. Was like, "Hey guys, it's a street light," and it's everything lined up. He showed the side by side, and I think that was actually on NASA Unexplained File or something like that.
Probably. I don't remember the season, but I've done most of it. I think I've done all the seasons on NASA's Unexplained.
Yeah.
Files. and then Now What on Earth. They're both on Discovery Channel, I think, or one's on
Not Geo or
Science,
no, it's not
or
one of
some
them.
Science Channel and Discovery. But the bottom line is that I try to be like a voice of reason amid the chaos.
Right.
Try to bring a little science into the mix. I'm not saying that I'm right about everything, not at all. I'm saying that what I'm doing is I'm trying to bring to light the possibilities of bringing science into the equation. If science can describe it, if science works, then we have an obligation to make it known.
Yeah.
To try and bring it out. If it doesn't work, I have an obligation to make that point as well, and I will without hesitation. You got to remember, all right, I want to be proven wrong. I want to be able to find something I cannot prove to be something that's ordinary. That's my goal.
Yeah, and I think I mean I shouldn't speak for you when I say this, but it'd be nice to get a piece of evidence that Mark couldn't come up with. An answer for
I love it.
To take it into the next level, and then start, that way. But if there is a probable answer, it's gonna show itself.
Yeah.
And if there's a possibility that it could be that, and you can't prove that it's not that, then guess what? Well, I was about to say Murphy's Law, but I don't think that's the right. What's the law that usually it's the most simplest answer?
You mean Occam's razor?
Occam's razor, yeah. Thank you.
Occam's razor,
yeah.
well, the truth is, yeah, exactly. And and by the way, I just want to say, Bill Forte is in the studio here with us right now, and I just want to thank him for his hospitality and letting us set up here and take over all his
big hand for Bill.
Take over all his area. Now, Bill, get us drinks and please make us dinner. Just kidding. He actually did
this
that
guy
already,
has
and
been
it was
just
spectacular.
non-stop. If he ever opened this hotel, I'd be the first one.
Yeah, I know. I mean it. And
would.
the rooms are great.
I would.
Sheets every 3 days.
You have never met sweeter people than him and his mom.
Yeah.
Oh man, guys.
Yeah, and his mom is known
been
as
great.
Mama. We call her Mama. I
Yep.
call her Mama, and I just met her today.
And I call her Ma.
And he goes, well, that's because Keith knows her.
Such great people,
Keith knows her
such
better.
great people. And just like Bill was saying the other night, we get here, and literally all of us, everybody that came here, it's like we knew each other forever. There was no weirdness. Hi, how you doing? Blah blah. It was just right into like we knew each other forever.
Yep. I just want to mention to Dave Shaw, congratulations on getting the money for the CubeSat. Fantastic job. I think it's the start of a revolution, Dave.
Wow. So
It's the
you
start
got
of a revolution, man.
So what
Well
exactly
done.
do we have now with that? He's just got.
He's got the money, which I think is
To finish
means
up and
that
pay for
they
the
can
data.
also pay for the data.
Awesome.
Because that was sort of the other end of things,
Yep.
It's one thing getting money for the launch, it's another for actually paying for the post-launch data reduction and so forth. So that's fantastic.
Awesome.
Well done, Dave. Well done.
And I do want to mention that the chat is open for. I'm just taking over your channel at this point,
Go
Mark.
right ahead, Keith. I'm
chat-
Here. I'm here too. Don't worry.
The chat is open. If you have questions for Mark, whatever it is, throw it out there. That's what he's here for.
Yeah, and what I'd like to do is I'd just like to mention something really quick to you guys. If you look on the screen right now in the view, we're actually looking that bright star you see just to the right of center. That's Vega. Now that's it has a spectral type A, which in the big picture, okay, the brightest and hottest are type O. Then there's B, and then there's A. All right. Then they get a little less. There's a lower temperature, and that's FGKM. And the Sun is a G type star. Actually, it's a G, and there's number designations within each letter. So B goes from B0 to B9. A goes from A0 to A9. And it turns out that Vega, this one we're looking at here, the bright one, is actually an A0 type star. So it's like the earliest type A star there is. We use early and late to describe this. That's just the way it is. And as an A0 star, one of the things that we want to consider is that these stars are pretty much the earliest type star that can have planets. So it's possible that Vega could at some point foster a set of planets. And I'd really be interested to see in the future if that was actually something that we might actually see evidence of in some way. So right now, we don't notice that. I mean, we do see some kind of dust around Vega that might be indicative of a potential planetary formation, but right now we don't know for sure. And there's a lot of data to still be reduced, but it's pretty cool. Now, down just to the lower left of Vega, you see another star that's pretty close to it. That star is, and I say lower left, I literally mean just a few widths of the image of Vega down to the lower left. You see another star right there. It's kind of small. That star is actually a double star, but it's more than that. That's called Epsilon Lyra. It's more than that. It's actually a double star. It's actually 4 stars. It's like four stars in one, but it's 2 and 2. And the weird thing is, those 2 stars are actually orbiting each other. And they're orbiting together as a pair around another pair. It's a very, very complex system. And those stars are actually, those 2 outer stars together are very far from each other. But if you were in the sky, if you were in a planet around any one of those 4 stars, you would actually see the other 2 stars very brightly, even in your daytime sky. So they're not far enough away so that they aren't going to be dominant in each other's sky. They are. And those stars are phenomenal. And I think it's a strong possibility that we'll learn more about the Epsilon Lyra system. And Mom just walked in. Hi, Mom.
Hi, baby.
There we go. See?
Ma!
Yeah. No, she was very hospitable to allow a house full of crazy people.
Mm-hmm. Very, very.
And we really appreciate it. It's very nice, and she's been very good to us. So,
Thank you.
of course. Now, to the lower right from Epsilon Lyra, which is that I told you, that star just to the lower left of Vega, to the lower right, forming kind of a little triangle with Vega. That's actually another star known as Zeta Lyra, Zeta 1. And that star is a very, it's a very interesting star. There's a lot to talk about with all these stars, in fact. But Zeta Lyra is actually it's sort of it's a massive star on its own right, and it's a little bit bigger than our sun, and it's actually we want to talk about the spectral type. The spectral type is that letter designation I gave you with it's like A0 through 9, for instance. Well, this one is a strange kind of star because it's actually it's called an A5 star, but it's also got a whole bunch of other peculiarities with it, and that's something that's really cool. And when we get to the telescope thing, we'll actually find that we'll be able to look at some of these stars up a little bit closer and see them. Now, stars only will appear as a point of light, all right, and that's because they're so far away, and that, unfortunately, is going to, and that was a massive people comet that just went through the view. The actual star itself will only be a point of light. Now, and I'll answer Duplicat's question in a second. I would tell you that when we look at these stars, you're never going to see them as more than just a point of light. There are no stars that can be resolved as the disks that they are. And I want to give you an interesting metric. The nearest star system to us is what? You know this. The answer is Alpha Centauri. That's actually a triple star system, all right? There's Alpha Centauri A, Alpha Centauri B, and then there's Proxima Centauri. A and B are kind of similar in their spectral type, okay? They're both in the G class. But then you have Proxima, which is actually a red dwarf. It's in the M class. That case, and we've actually found a planet around the M class star. That's interesting because that means that maybe Proxima Centauri would be a target for our space probe someday. Wouldn't that be cool? I would think that would be very cool. And so, that said, if we could ever get to Proxima Centauri, we would notice, of course, that all those stars, A and B, of Alpha Centauri, and then Proxima, which is a distant star that's gravitationally bound to it and orbiting it from a distance, those three stars would appear like points of light for a great deal of the time that you were traveling to them. They would only appear as disks in the very last few hundred light years or whatever. And I'm sorry, not 100 light years. The last few 100,000 astronomical units from the star. You wouldn't see it as a disk until you got really, really close to it. Now, the question is, how far away is the star such that you could see it as a disk? And if we take Alpha Centauri A, the main component of the triple star system, and if we say, how far do I have to take a quarter, a 25-cent piece? How far away from the camera do I have to go to make that quarter have the same diameter as Alpha Centauri does in the sky? The answer is an astonishing 765 miles. That's how a quarter, 765 miles in a telescope, you could never see that as a disk. So the point is, if you have such a video or such a view of a star like that, you're going to be looking for this tiny, tiny disk that's almost literally quite impossible to see. So that's the conundrum we have of trying to find the actual diameter of the stars, you know. So in this case, we won't actually see a disk of a star for quite a long time. It's not going to be easy, and it'll be very hard for us to find it. So now, and that's at the closest distance. That's only 4 light years away. Alpha Centauri is not far. It's only 4 light years away. You know, and that said, I think that it's important to keep in mind that that's at 4 light years away. At the fastest possible speed we can travel right now, it would still take us 19,000 years to get there. That's how big space is, and that's how big the universe is. That's the typical distance between stars. So this is something that's really, really impressive to me. I think that if we look at the case where at 4 light years away, all right, we want to travel just that 4 light years, there is a way to do it. And NASA's actually funding a lab that can do that. And that lab is called the Alcubierre Lab. And they have been researching how to travel by creating what's called a warp bubble. And that sounds like Star Trek, but Miguel Alcubierre in 1994 or so came into the realization that being that he was somewhat of a Star Trek fanatic, they would actually make it such that he would make it such that the warp drive would be named after Gene Roddenberry in deference to Star Trek. I thought that was really cool. Now, that said, the warp drive, the way it works, is you would use a lot of energy to create a warp bubble around your ship. What's a warp bubble? A warp bubble is a strange change that you make with energy around your ship that would form a isolated bubble that would separate you from the universe and the ability to move through the universe. Everything would change. Now, it means that what you would do is you would be able to literally compress the distance between you and your target, that is shorten the distance, and then lengthen at the same time the distance between you and your origin. What's cool about that is that this means you can actually avoid the light speed limit. The light speed limit is the limit in our regular universe. So if we have this regular speed limit and can't violate that, then we can never, ever get to Alpha Centauri in less than 4 years at light speed because it's 4 light years away. That said, what we want to consider is that what we want to do when we consider this is that I'm sorry, we're looking at an object on the screen here, and that was a bug. There was an insect that flew by. There's also a plane at high altitude. You can see the plane. You'll see that
That's
shortly.
you're about 30 seconds behind on the stream. So
we're looking at it live, but 30 seconds
No,
in,
not
you'll
even
see
that. Wow, you're only about 10 seconds behind on here.
Cool.
That thing that was shooting down was pretty neat looking.
Yeah, and it went straight for a little bit and then it curved.
Mm-hmm.
So going back to this, if we couldn't create a warp drive or a warp bubble, then you know what would happen. We would never have the ability to get to Alpha Centauri in less than 4 years. And 4 years is light speed, and corporeal objects like human beings can never travel at light speed. There are rules, and Einstein discovered these rules. And according to the theory of relativity, general relativity, there's special relativity, general relativity. And according to general relativity, we cannot ever achieve light speed because we actually have a non-relativistic mass. We're regular objects with particular mass of our own. Some of us more massive than others. But what will happen is, if you try to go faster than light or at the speed of light, you rapidly approach infinity in terms of how much mass you will have. And you will end up, because the numbers work out this way, you will be charging headlong into impossibility. So if that is the case, what we would want to do is figure a way to circumvent the speed limit of the universe. The way we do that is we create this warp bubble around our ship, as Miguel Alcubierre said. And then, once we have that, and we can compress the distance from us to our destination, as I said, and lengthen the distance between us and our origin, as I said, we can get there in a short amount of time. For instance, it takes us, like I told you, 19,000 years at our fastest possible speed to get to Alpha Centauri with our current rockets and so forth. If we use the Alcubierre drive, we can actually get there literally in 5 days. Now, what's impressive about that is that it's 5 days. But the thing is, there's caveats, because you have to remember that as we're traveling through this strange environment that we create by creating this warp bubble, and we do that compression, it's like folding over the corners of pieces of paper to reach each other and then unfolding it once we get to our destination. Well, we do that, we're going to be piling up bugs on our windshield, basically. Mm-hmm. But the bugs are going to be very high energy particles and a lot of energy material along the way. And when we stop, guess what happens? They come off in a massive explosive detonation. So you and your buddies are on your warp drive ship. You go to Alpha Centauri, and as you're slowing down, you're about to come to a stop. The bugs on the windshield are starting to come loose. But at the time you see there's a planet around Proxima Centauri, and you see all kinds of planets and space stations and stuff all around that. And you're going, wow, we found another life form, another alien civilization. Then as you stop, this massive detonation occurs, totally destroying the entire solar system. And then you just stare at your friend and you say, okay, hey Keith, how about we don't tell them what we saw, okay?
Yep.
Yeah,
let's
okay.
just keep moving.
Nothing to see here.
Swamp gas.
Oh yeah, we're coming home, folks. Yeah, there's nothing here. Meanwhile, in 4 years, the light from Alpha Centauri is suddenly extinguished for some reason, and nobody knows why.
Yeah.
Comments, Keith?
No comment. I plead the fifth.
Come on, don't say no. I'm taking a drink here. I'm drinking some Diet Coke.
You don't want me to comment, son.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so we have some cool stuff. We have some cool possibilities. Here. So now also up in the Constellation Constellation Lyra, and I don't know if I'll be able to show you this. And I wish there was a way to have a pointer on the screen.
What do you need to show?
I want to show the two stars that are kind of above each other. Okay, you're not gonna
hide cursor.
Yeah, well, we'll see here.
I was hoping they gave you a thing so the mouse would show, but it doesn't.
Okay. Well, okay, I'll just tell you this. To the right of Vega, that bright star we see in the middle, if you look kind of a little to the right and down from Vega, you'll see there's one star just below it, and then below that, another star. Go over to the right a little more, and you see another star, and then below that one, a vertical star. a vertically placed star underneath that. So it sort of stepped down. There's those 2 stars. Those 2 stars out there are the bottom of Lyra, the harp, and in between those 2, almost dead center between those 2 stars, is the remnant that we'll see in the live tour sky stream of a star that died and left behind this cloud, this massive outpouring of, well, elements for the periodic table. Because all the elements in the periodic table are made in the cores of stars and with colliding neutron stars. So that particular star that is in the center of that is expelled a huge amount of its outer atmosphere into the interstellar medium. It's called a planetary nebula, and it has nothing to do with planets. But it's called a planetary nebula because it looks round. And at first glance, you could mistake it for a faint planet. And in the late 1700s, Charles Messier created the Messier catalog. And he was an avid comet hunter, and so he decided that he would create this catalog that was of these objects that you could see that you didn't want to mistake as planets. Didn't want to mistake as comets, because he wanted to make sure that everybody knew this is not a comet, this is not a comet, this is not a comet. And this particular one in between those 2 stars is Messier 57, the Ring Nebula. And it kind of looks like a ring when you study it closely. And it looks like a ring because, there's been a lot of speculation as to why the shape actually looks the way it does. I have my theories, other people have their theories. But think of it as a sphere of gas that's moving in plasma and stellar atmosphere that's moving away from the star, say in a sphere. Well, at the front and back, I think the material is going to be thinner as viewed from our distance than around the edges, where it's going to look thicker. So if you held your hand and you had your palms facing you, or your palm facing you, that's, let's say, the back of the star, you're looking through your palm. But if you turn it to the side, it's almost like that's how much you're looking through. You're looking through the edge. You're looking through more of your hand. You're looking at the part of your hand right by your thumb, all the way down through your whole palm to your little finger. And then as you come around the front again, you're only looking through the thickness of your palm. And that gives you an idea of how this works. It's an illusion. So from every perspective in the universe, that ring nebula will look like a ring, no matter where you look at it from. That's the conventional thinking. Now, there has been some research to indicate that there might be a subtle difference here, that we might be looking down on top of something called a bipolar nebula. That doesn't mean it's a nebula with an attitude and with problems, okay? It means that it has a lobe of material shooting out of one side, and then exactly 180 degrees away, another lobe of material shooting out the bottom. So we could be looking down on top of essentially a tunnel of gas that's been expelled from the star. And we say that only because when we look at other nebula, which we'll look at, one of which being something called the Dumbbell Nebula, because it looks like a weight dumbbell with a lobe at each side. These are also bipolar nebulae, and these are planetary nebulae. So these are fascinating objects, and I think it's really a good thing to look at, especially in the live view with the telescope. We can also take plenty of photos live in the telescope and show you what we're looking at. And then you actually get to see them because the camera that we're using is a really, really special camera that will allow us to take short exposures of 10 to 20 seconds, but show you phenomenal detail in galaxies and in other things that we look at.
Amazing detail.
It is amazing. It's going to be great. I use this camera now. I have it sitting next to me. And it's actually a beautiful camera. It can also, and this is the nice part about this camera, if you're looking at the regular, the woods or whatever, you're looking for that bear that's sneaking up on your garbage, this thing can show you night as day. I mean, it turns night into day in full color.
And that camera is what again?
It's the Sony A7S II.
And we did have a question from, there we go, Genghis. Any comments on the future speed of the universe increasing or decreasing?
Yep, I got lots of comments. One of them in particular is that we always thought the universe could either have been an oscillating universe where it would expand and then contract under its own gravity and oscillate and form a new Big Bang. Boom, do it again, do it again, do it again. In, out, in, out. That was one. We also thought that perhaps the universe was steady state at one point, not changing, always immutable, just the way it's staying the way it was. And then we also thought that maybe the universe was expanding forever. Well, guess what? It's doing none of those things. The latest research indicates, to show you just how little we actually know, the latest research indicates that not only is the universe not expanding like that, not contracting, and not steady state, the universe is actually expanding, but it's increasing the rate of expansion. It's accelerating outward. What the heck? I mean, that's what's happening.
Holy Moses.
Holy moly.
Oh my.
Oh my. Oh my. Thank you, Sulu.
My.
So the bottom line is that it's actually expanding outward and at an accelerating rate. What that means is, imagine putting a balloon in a vacuum chamber and then starting to evacuate the air.
Incoming.
Okay. Right. Actually, I think that was an ember from the from the fire.
Even better.
There's a fire out there, by the way. So yeah, that's a fire ember closer to the camera. Yeah, you know what? That's analysis.
Thanks for ruining my dreams, Mark.
I ruined your dream, man. Sorry. But, so anyway, where was I was talking about something here.
Oh yeah, so you got a little mesmerized by that ember too, huh?
Yeah, I got mesmerized. Thank you, by the way. Yeah, if you imagine a balloon in a vacuum chamber, as you evacuate the air, that balloon is going to increase in size because the outer pressure is being reduced. So this is just a metaphorical way to look at this. And if that's happening, it's reducing that pressure, and you see the balloon expanding. That's what's happening to the universe. It's actually accelerating outward in that way. So there's something outside our known universe that is actually attracting the outer edge ever more. Now, that is, and Daryl's saying something very important here, that is the basis and fundamental foundation behind dark energy. That's correct, Daryl. This is something that we've discovered that is really absolutely and utterly unbelievable, because this is not within any of our understanding. It's something outside of our understanding. We don't know what dark energy is, but we call it dark, by the way, not because it's black. We call it dark because we don't know what it is. That's all the dark means. Dark matter, we don't know what it is, so it's just dark matter. So basically, we could have said some stuff, stuff we don't understand. But dark matter sounds better. Honestly, that's really kind of what it is. Semantically, it's better to say dark something, and that's just the lingo that you get used to. So that's really kind of interesting, and I think that when we talk about dark matter and how it interacts, we see what it's doing. But we can't create it. I mean, what's dark matter? It's like negative mass or something. It's like, whoa, come on. How do we even know what that means? That's like, that's like the first time you heard about negative numbers. How do you take a negative number and make that seem like something that makes sense to you? It does. I mean, we use them all the time. All right. But again, for some of you that are mathematically oriented, we have imaginary numbers as well. And what are imaginary numbers? I mean, imaginary numbers, that seems silly, remember? So imaginary numbers make no sense to us in the real world. You don't measure a 2x4 using imaginary numbers. You don't measure that way. And Nancy mentions that dark matter is not something to toy with, but CERN is going crazy with it. Well, actually, I think, Nancy, that's actually pretty safe. And the reason I say that is because all we're doing at CERN with dark matter and dark energy, actually, is we're trying to create particles that will help us find out more about what dark energy is and what dark matter is. And we're not creating anything that's going to be catastrophic. And the reason is because it's so hard to make the smallest of reactions occur. We don't have any way to actually keep this reaction going. It's actually nothing that's self-sustaining. It goes away very quickly, so it's nothing that will end up becoming a catastrophic failure that's going to cause all kinds of problems. But I understand the sympathy, or the sentiment rather, and I do believe that it's
coming to join the party soon.
Nice.
okay. Bill says he's coming to join the party, so I don't know what that means.
Ooh.
But I think I'm afraid.
Birthday suit.
He needs to.
It did sound a bit scary.
No, you do.
Don't be a big poopy head.
So anyway, that's kind of what we're talking about, and I think that it's dark matter and dark energy are really kind of cool, but dark matter is really just matter that we can't see.
Is it possible?
Yes.
On some plane of existence.
Yes, it is.
That dark matter is gravity.
Is gravity? Well, here's the thing. Dark matter. I'll give you an example. Dark matter. When the universe was created, when we went back as astronomers and calculated how much mass was required to make the Big Bang happen the way it did, we noticed there just wasn't nearly enough mass to create what happened.
Right.
So that spawned a whole bunch of theories. One of them was that there was just more mass that we never saw. This dark matter. Okay. There was another one, a theory, which basically said that the universe didn't just spawn one universe. It spawned multiple universes.
Right.
Okay, but that had to spawn from some mass that was also available that we just never saw because it ended up in another universe. Now, if your head doesn't blow up from that,
it's close.
then yeah, okay, then you see, it's it. If that doesn't make you have an accident, okay, then I think
Already did.
Oh, I already did. Okay, sorry, man.
Sorry.
I apologize. Sorry.
No, you clean.
All right, yeah, you clean it. So the bottom line is that we.
Dude, I'm trying to sleep over here, guys. Come on.
You picked the wrong one to do that, especially with Bill coming in.
So when we consider that we actually think that the way the Big Bang occurred, maybe there was this energy created that this matter created or helped create the universe that actually was part of making other parallel universes. That's very possible. There were a lot of papers that you can see in the Astrophysical Journal, which is a journal that astronomers like to pay attention to, which discusses the fact that many studies show that it's possible that there is parallel universes that were created when the Big Bang occurred. Studies later than that said things like, well, yeah, we think that the parallel universes exist, and we now offer up a topology, that is a layout for how we think they're laid out. I think this is all very, very good stuff. There's a lot of reasons why people would want to understand this, because we like to know how our universe was created. We'd like to know what created it. Now, could dark matter, when you say, could dark matter be gravity? I'm not sure it could be gravity, but it certainly would have gravity. And having gravity...
So you don't think that, you don't think they're one and the same, put it that way. Like gravity is dark matter is gravity. And that...
Not particularly. I think dark matter has gravity because it has mass.
Okay.
The unseen mass that we can't see. We don't see the material.
And has it ever been measured?
Well,
or detected, I should say.
In a sense, because we know that about 4% of the universe is something we understand, right?
Well, here's what got me thinking about this. You were talking about duality earlier. With the species, everything's two-sided.
Symmetry.
Symmetry.
About the central axis on the
and it's like,
vertebrates. Yeah.
So we're always looking for something, and that almost falls in line with everything has equal and opposite reaction kind of thing. It's along those same lines with the symmetry. That means everything has an opposite, which is why they're going anti-gravity. So that's what got me thinking about that. Like, what if those things were one and the same, and we were just trying to categorize them as different things? Like, what if their properties applied gravity to, or apply dark energy to a gravitational property? Once again, but we need to actually.
You raise a good point. You raise a good point, because one of the things that we have to consider is that we don't really. We have a construct, a mental construct, a mathematical construct, where our numbers aren't even sufficient to describe the universe properly. For instance, in the quantum mechanical world, there's certain values that can't be the same as their counterparts in the macro world of physics. Yet they're the same quantity, but they can't be the same value, or the physics doesn't work at either end.
Right.
So, the camera fell over. I think,
I hope it didn't fall
We'll see
over.
that shortly. So, I think it's important to. Here it goes.
It looked like he moved it.
Yeah, he might have moved it, and maybe he's changing the battery.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
There we
you
go. It's back. Dun, dun, dun. You'll
Awesome.
see it shortly, guys. But so I do think that our. Oh, now something else happened. Okay, here we go.
He's just adjusting the exposure on it. Wow.
I think that it's very important for us to understand that in the physics world, the numbers don't even agree properly sometimes, and that's painful for us because
So in the physics world, 2 and 2 doesn't always have to be 2.
well, 2 and 2 is never 2. 2 and 2
Right.
is usually 4.
No, I mean as in not side by side. The number 2 and the
Yeah,
number 2
that's correct.
sometimes isn't exactly number 2
right.
and number 2.
That's right.
Yeah.
And here's Bill.
Yeah, just change the battery.
I noticed.
Looks great.
We all noticed.
I'm sure they did.
At first, I got worried. I thought the camera was falling over because it started to lean. Oh no, it's falling over in slow motion. And I thought it was tipping and falling over. Oh no, here it goes. So, anyway, like I said before, that you're looking at the constellation of Lyra, and Lyra is known for Vega, the bright star you see in the center, and then just to its right and down below. Not just to its right, but a little bit farther over are these two stars that are just sort of above each other. The lower one's a little bit brighter than the upper one. That's sort of the constellation of Lyra. It's not a really large constellation, but it's actually a constellation of the harp, the little lyre. As a kid growing up, that was one of my favorite constellations because I could look in between those two bottom stars that are in Lyra that I mentioned before. And those two bottom stars, and you can look this up if you want to, those two bottom stars actually are a star called Chiliac and Solifat. They're
Solifat.
New Lyra, and the new being the Greek letter New Lyra and Gamma Lyra, those two stars. And Gamma's a little bit brighter than New. And those two stars, actually, between them, there's that beautiful Messier 57, that Planetary Nebula, that exploding star, not exploding, but it's sloughing off its outer layers. That in star death, that's what happens. And we see that, I just wish we could have the telescope and just zoom right in and check it out, but we can't. I apologize. So, that said, I do believe that, when we get to the telescope and we can do this, we can take a look at Lyra, and then we can zoom in and actually see, the Ring Nebula in there, and it will look beautiful. There's no doubt about it. So I'm very, very stoked about doing that. I think that this is going to be a great way to do sky tours, and we're not just going to look in Lyra. There's literally hundreds and hundreds of objects visible that we can see even now in the sky, and we're gonna go visit all of them, and it may take us a solid week of clear skies to be able to check them all out. And I think that we'll be able to do that really efficiently because in the John Zach Memorial Observatory that I started and built over in my property back in Connecticut, we have a beautiful view of the sky. We have awesome view of the horizons. We can get low in the sky. We can get high in the sky. We can see an awful lot, and we'll be able to find ourselves moving all throughout the sky. And yes, Daryl, I was thinking very much so that we could actually do a Messier marathon where we go through the Messier catalog and go through the different objects that we can find and see what we can do. The Messier objects, there's around 103 of them, and the Messier objects are interesting because they will be very much the kinds of objects that we can see readily with the size scope that I have in the observatory, actually quite easily. And then we're gonna go down another list. We'll go down what's called the NGC or New General Catalog, and the NGC catalog has a lot of really cool things in it. It's things that have actually been seen by the Hubble, and my plan is to show you how the Hubble sees some of these things that we're going to look at, and how the telescope sees them. So you'll see how we have seen them for years and years and years, and then how the Hubble sees them. The difference is really night and day. The Hubble's in space. The Hubble can take the time to amass a long exposure of an object and not have any atmosphere to worry about. So the detail is just impressive. And we can throw those in. I can show you those in the middle of the stream. We can actually pop in these things and show you, in the future as we move forward. And this will be something that's absolutely great, because you'll get to see what these are. And then once we see them, we can talk about what they are. What is that cloudiness? What is that? And when you talk about looking at objects in the sky, there's something.
I'm gonna give you this.
You can see it?
You can actually end up seeing some things in the Hubble imagery that will just astonish you.
No.
For instance, looking.
Yes. No.
You'll be looking in some distant galaxies and be able to see the star forming regions in these galaxies, which are just beautiful. So there's an awful lot of things that we're gonna do, and an awful lot of ways that we'll do it. And I'm just pretty pleased that we're gonna be able to go there. And Daryl's asking a question about my time frame. It's actually ready. When I go back tomorrow to Connecticut, Keith's actually following me back to Connecticut because he's going to be picking up a little something that I told him he can have.
I think we might have to make it a trivia question.
You think so?
Maybe he'll post it up. Maybe you could take a picture of it.
I think he's told people about it already, though.
Oh.
That's true.
He spilled the beans?
He spilled the beans. Yeah, he just spilled the beans. See, I work, again, I have a special effects business, a visual effects business, and I do my astronomy very seriously on the side, and that's what my degree's in, and I actually try to contribute to my research with some special project work that I do. But the bottom line is, to bring in the daily dollars, we actually create giant planets that we put in these big daycares all over the country, and we also do work for the Navy, and we mostly in the submarine world. And then we actually, in addition, we do some other stuff which is really fascinating. We do visual effects work for movies and television, and for television, you sometimes you amass things, you get things which are kind of cool. And last summer we had the opportunity to actually work on, you may remember the new iPad Pro that came out. Well, we did the commercial for the iPad Pro. And the nice thing is, the iPad Pro commercial was something we did for Apple, and it was up in the studio with Douglas Trumbull at Trumbull Studios. And we actually created a universe using water tanks and dyes, and created all these visual effects. Now, the difference between visual effects and special effects are computer-generated effects. Visual effects are visual effects that are done right in the camera. You see them as they appear just as you see them. So, for instance, a scale model that looks real would be a visual effect prop, not a special effects prop, but a visual effects prop like a boat cutting through the water, where the water has been changed to a computer-generated water to look more real. That's a visual effects prop combined with a special effects shot. All right? So special and visual, two different things in the film arena, in the visual and the TV arena. And we kind of do both. We do the computer stuff, and we do the model work as well. And when we did the iPad commercial, it was a visual effects shot. Oh, look, a bird. We did a visual effects shot. You'll see it in a second. We did a visual effects shot, and we actually did a we did a bunch of special effects shots as well using the computer. And that was important because it's a good combination, knowing how to combine the two together. So we were tasked with creating a comet and showing it going through an atmosphere. Now, what I did was I had a few kids I had come up to do internship work. And what we did was we created these little tiny rocks, drilled little bunches of holes in them, sanded them down, made them look like meteors and comet debris. And then we actually dipped and injected white poster paint into the recesses of the thing, of these little particles. And then we dropped them in an effects tank and then slid a little tab out so that they would drop down in this tank. And we filmed them being dropped down, but we did it at high speed so that as they went falling, they were appearing to move in slow motion. So we filmed them at like 800 frames per second or 1,000 frames per second. And that means when you play it back at 30 frames per second, it's sort of in slow motion. You see these things rolling and tumbling. And that's a realistic, heavy-looking object traveling through an atmosphere. And that's what we did to make the cometary entry into an atmosphere. It was beautiful. It looked like the smoke coming off. And that's truly a visual effects prop, a visual effects shot, I should say. So we did a lot of that. And the coolest thing that I've ever worked on, I think, was probably that Apple commercial. Now, I did a Burger King commercial a couple years ago up at the studio, and we had to create catapults that would fire 3-inch Oreo cookies that I had to make, and they had to look real, and they did. They looked exactly real. And I ended up taking the cookies we made, we put them on these platforms for these catapults. And the idea was we would fire all these 3 catapults, and the cookies would all end up in the center of the shot, right where the camera was looking. And we shot it at high speed, 1,600 frames per second, using a Phantom Pro camera. So it was a very expensive camera, and it even comes with an operator. You can't run it by yourself unless you have a huge amount of training. And the camera shots that we did showed these cookies flying at each other, and I made 300 of these cookies. And as the cookies were flying at each other, sometimes you saw the shots where they would just totally miss each other, and you just laugh because, oh, well, it's a waste of these 3 cookies. And then sometimes they would hit one edge and the other one wouldn't hit, and it's like, oh, we missed, we got them. And then we would end up we got the timing right. We actually had these electronic timers on them that would actually get us to within milliseconds. And we would get the timing down where we'd actually have all 3 firing at slightly different times, so that it would give the cookies time to make it to the right place. And judging on the efficiency of the mechanisms, we actually ended up getting quite a few good shots of all 3 cookies hitting at the same time, exploding when they hit each other. Because I didn't make them; they weren't Oreos. They were 3 inches in diameter. They're big, and I made them out of plaster that were then weakened by Dremels on the inside where you didn't see any of the grooves. And then we mixed the plaster with brown poster paint so that it was brown through and through. Otherwise, it would just be brown on the outside and then white when it cracked. And then we weakened the plaster with another substance that had a lot of air in it, like a vermiculite. And that made it so that if you accidentally dropped the cookie, it would shatter into 1 billion pieces. And that's what we wanted. We tried dipping real cookies in liquid nitrogen. All that did was make really, really hard cookies. And so that was kind of funny. There goes something. It looked like an ember. You'll see in a second.
Probably.
Orange.
I actually have a question for you. I don't know if I lowered my volume because I didn't want to overtake your volume.
You don't have to do that.
What would be the hardest thing for you to simulate if you were to set your mind to it? Also, is it possible to replicate all the exoplanets that we're seeing and create a model based on the information that's being gathered by some of these telescopes?
Well, to answer your first question, the hardest thing to simulate is actually water.
Really?
Because water doesn't scale well. So if you were to try and make model water, you have to use real water in some capacity. So in the old movies, what they did is they shot the water and they made it in slow motion. And it looked like it was too rounded. It didn't have the right, white caps on it. None of that. It was too rounded. It looked like a model. It could clearly give it away. And the model could be beautiful. but the water doesn't scale well. So they would usually have to add some special effects to the water to make it look right. For instance, they would run fans over the water at high speed to actually break up those just very slowly rounded mounds of water and make them look like they're more complex. And that worked to some extent. And that's why in the old movies, when they're showing these destroyers at sea, you actually see it's very windy. And they're doing that because they're trying to make the water look more scale. The other thing that is hard to get scale is to get the hard thing to get scale is the actual smoke coming out of a smokestack of a ship. Okay, because that doesn't scale well either. So that's hard to do. So that's hard. Now, to simulate exoplanets, well, that could be done. I mean, for one of the for NASA's Unexplained Files, one of the seasons, I actually created a model of the moon Enceladus around Saturn, and I simulated showing the geysers coming up. Now, I didn't spew water out of these geyser openings like on Enceladus. I actually used special effects fog, because filmed at the right rate, it looks like water. See, it's a matter of taking something you can get to work and making it appear like something it's not. That's the whole art form of getting this to work, So that's what I did. And so we could get that we can do that. And scaling an exoplanet is not a big deal.
I have to say today, and I'm sure that I believe Keith did stream Mark's presentation on P&K Space Imaging today.
Well, he actually streamed it on
your channel?
Yeah, it's on my channel.
Oh, I gotta say, it was awesome. And I did sit in the middle of the freaking thing. Got a call, and I'm running down the aisle, and
oh, that was you?
that was me. And Mark, it's that guy.
Oh, no. Yeah. So, I was in the middle of my talk, and you're going to hear a phone ring. And there's only one person in the audience that had his phone on, and that was Bill. Bill Skywatcher had his phone on. So what do? He gets up and he runs as fast as he can out of the building, which I got to tell you was a hilarious sight in itself. And I said, "He's that guy." And of course, all the audience was laughing hysterically.
And the thing, they were great speakers, but Mark, when there was during the afternoon, and I think I streamed that. Mark was the first one to do a preview. I believe you were the first, right? Today?
No. I don't remember his name, but that guy that did it was from last year. He was a speaker.
No, but as far as the preview of who was going to be speaking in the evening.
Oh yeah.
You were the first one.
Yeah, I was supposed to be I wasn't supposed to be first, but I was.
I was sitting in the audience, and there were seats available. When Mark started to speak, the seats quickly filled in. And I have to tell you, and there are witnesses here. Jade is right here, chilling out. The place absolutely packed and gravitated to just this 15-minute segment of listening to what Mark was going to be discussing of his presentation in the evening. And they were 5 feet. They were like 5 people deep listening to him.
I actually was very impressed with that. I thought, no, this is good. And, during the evening presentation, we got quite a few people there. Because,
which actually surprised me.
The UFO fair was over.
Yes.
And still we got a lot of people there anyway. This didn't happen in the middle of all the excitement. This happened at the end of the day when everyone's pretty much going home.
Exactly.
The vendors are closing up.
And they're there all day.
Yeah.
And to make that time to go and see the presenters. Now, why I say this, what Mark does and brings the scientific aspect of everything that's going on. I think people, there's so many people out there you can reach your certain conclusions about, people that claim they have the experiences and so forth. But what Mark does, I think a lot of people are really interested in the scientific perspective and still have that tie-in to extraterrestrials, the possibility of life in the universe. But by bringing in his background into it, I think a lot of people feel that it's a grounded approach and they have a better understanding of seeing this as a possibility. It's not so far-fetched in their minds that, oh, here's just another person saying they got abducted or they've seen lights in the sky. But what Mark does, and when he puts the science there, and he speaks about exoplanets or Enceladus or the moon of Jupiter, Europa. I mean, I think it is so important for a person like him to do what he's doing out there because he's separate from all these other speakers that are either talking about research or, like I mentioned before, experiences. He brings a whole different platform. And I think a lot of people appreciated Mark. And that's why I think when Mark goes around the country and around the world, he adds that extra element. And, with all the others that are involved. And I have to say, Kate Davidson, I found fascinating. She's the person that I believe I had on my YouTube a couple of times. And she spoke about her implants. And, again, to see that, and then at the same time what Mark was discussing, and to come together. And I think Mark he might want to talk more about this. Mark may be taking a trip to Norway.
Yeah, actually, Kate is going to put together a conference over there, and she invited me to come. And
which would be great for you.
Yeah, I would love it. It would be fun, And I asked her about the Hessdalen lights as well. Mm-hmm. And she didn't really have all that much to say about the Hessdalen lights, which is kind of interesting because that's been a big thing over there. And I think it's because she said that there's really not much going on right now for that. So we're not sure what the phenomenon ever was. But yeah, and I think it'll be cool if Kate puts together a conference. She said to me, you have to come and come to this conference.
Another thing, and I'm just getting a little personal here, being around this gentleman here, and actually all of them, but what Mark is, he's a person that you can approach. He's just like one of the guys. That's the way Mark is. I have to say, I was around certain individuals over the past week that were involved in the Pine Bush event. There is no one, and I think everybody would say this, and we're not saying this just because he's sitting right here in this room.
Yeah, they are. Don't let them fool you.
It is the fact.
No, we say this behind your back.
Yeah, we say I mean, it's like we're just hanging out like yesterday when they were showing the Travis Walton movie. And that's another thing. When they were showing the Travis Walton movie and afterwards, and I think you had a remark after Travis had said something.
Yeah.
And Mark's whole, his personality, again, speaking the facts of science, but then his sense of humor, let me tell you, he's got a wicked sense of humor. You guys have no idea.
I do not have any sense of humor.
And you know what?
Nothing is funny.
You're the only one. I mean, I saw the energy in the crowd because people were laughing and what I'm trying to say is they were enjoying it.
Science is fun.
I mean, and you could feel his energy and his vibe. So what I think is going to be great when Mark goes full blown doing his streams from his home in this observatory, the treat that we're going to have seeing his presentations, it's going to be like Astronomy 101. And that's another point that you made, and I know you want to cut in, but
no, it's fine.
There are other individuals,
I'm trying to follow you here,
and I'm not going to mention names, that they speak in the language where sometimes it may not be totally understood by the audience.
Oh yeah, they don't actually clarify. They use terms that they have learned, but they don't define them for the audience. And,
exactly.
And the audience sits there going, "What's that?"
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, they go on and finish their point, and you never quite get the full impact because they don't define their terms.
Right.
And that's something that I think is important, actually.
I absolutely do, because I could be sitting back and somebody's throwing out all this terminology. It can go over a person's head. And I'm not saying that, I mean, I'm not saying I'm a stupid guy. But when I listen to this guy and he's talking in all these terms, what I'm trying to pretty much articulate is that when Mark speaks, you understand exactly what he's talking about. And he articulates himself very well.
Well, that's very
exactly, Genghis. Mark breaks it down.
Actually, Bill, if I may cut in.
Sure you can.
When Mark talks, you want to listen.
You do?
Absolutely.
Like, you want to listen.
You want to listen when I talk? That's nice of you to
Yes.
say.
I mean that. When you talk, I want to listen to what you have to say.
Thank you. That's very kind, actually, Tana.
And I haven't uploaded it yet, and I'm going to send it to Mark. Because the signal was poor, I wasn't getting nothing on my phone. I was having all kinds of... My phone's been acting really funny lately. I actually recorded on my camcorder a lot of the discussion that was going on when Paul and Keith and Eric and Heidi and I were in his workshop. So I've got a lot of that footage. When I was so humbled and honored when he gave all of us the replica models that he had developed of the Google Earth satellite. And I'm going to keep that with such... it's going to be a prized thing for me. It's such a sentimental value to me. But what I'm trying to say in connection to that, the detail in his work, I cannot wait to show you what his workshop looks like. It was amazing. Some of the things that he was showing. Did any of you guys discuss?
I'm sure Oompa Loompas walking around.
Did any of you discuss? Keith, did you discuss about the little thimble looking thing?
Oh.
No, we didn't.
Okay. And maybe Mark on a future stream when he's in his workshop will show you this.
I can show you that, yeah.
He shows us a little box, a clear box, plexiglass box.
I laser cut it as a case.
Yeah.
On my laser cutter, I actually made a case for it.
He's showing us something in this case. He's saying, anybody want to guess what is in here? And pretty much a lot of us said either a thimble or a filter.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really small. It looked a little larger than a thimble. So we're trying to figure it out. What the heck is this? It's got writing on it. Okay. Then he tells us, which Mark can get into more detail because I'll just throw it out there. He'll give you the details of it. It was a cup, a drinking cup. Was it styrofoam?
It was a styrofoam coffee cup.
Yeah,
after it went down 2,500 meters on the DSV Alvin, the Alvin submersible that found the Titanic. It was off the Oregon coast, and it was put into a net bag on the side of the submarine and brought down to 2,500 meters, and all the air was crushed out of it. But it was done evenly on all sides. So it looked like a tiny little replica of a styrofoam cup. And it remained that way because once pressed out, it stayed that way. And I don't know if there's any way to show that. I don't think you had any pictures or anything of it.
I don't know if I actually filmed it when we were there.
Yeah, I know you did with the camera. Okay,
Yeah.
but it's okay. But I'll make sure it gets seen at some point. But I'd like to actually also bring people on a tour of all of the fossil collection that I have too.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Because I've got dinosaur jaws. I've got, and again, I was working with people that wanted to trade me fossils for model work. I had a guy saying, "I want some submarines. Do you mind if I trade you some fossils?" I was like, "Mind? You got it, pal." And I ended up doing that. I thought it was pretty cool.
What's the coolest fossil you've collected?
Say what? What's that, Tana?
What is the coolest fossil you have collected?
What is the coolest fossil you've collected?
I think the coolest one that the question was, what are the coolest fossils I collected? And I was very picky. I have what's called a mass mortality plate, and it's I have a pair of them, and one of them is around 2.5 to 3 feet long by about 2.5 feet wide, and it's covered with trilobites that are all about 6 to 10 inches long. So it's beautiful, and I thought it was really amazing. The only trouble was I actually did an analysis of them because it was given to me as a fossil worth about $30,000. And I was going to pay for a very massive submarine project that this guy wanted. And it turned out that when I did the analysis, I was able to show that it was actually a resin copy and a fake. And so he paid a lot of money for it, and to find out it was worth about $300 was devastating to him. I sent him the proof. I showed him how I could actually extract a piece of the quote-unquote trilobite, and we could see that it was actually resin, urethane resin. He was devastated, and I felt really bad because I really wanted it to be real as well. But you know what? I kept it, and I gave him something for it in return, project. But the thing is, it would make a great coffee table thing to put inside a glass coffee table. It's really pretty. It's beautiful. So as a pretty prop, it's fine. It's fake. We know that, but it's okay. You know. And then so that's cool, but not the really cool one. The really cool one is another mass mortality plate. And that means, you know, a lot of creatures, a lot of dead creatures all on one plate. Probably because they were all covered in one mudslide or whatever. And this is something that happened, 60 to 70 million years ago. And I have a mass mortality plate with creatures called crinoids. And they were a form of plant that was in the ocean at one time. They're on a stalk. And I have a mass mortality plate with tons of these on it. And that plate's around a foot and a half by a foot and a half in size. And it's about half-inch thick. And you can actually see in the side of it that there's more layers of them underneath. If you wanted to dig through, you could see it. Fascinating stuff, and I think it's kind of cool. I love these kind of fossils. Another one of my favorites is actually I have insect amber, which is amber from approximately 70,000 years ago, that actually contains a little bee that had been trapped in the amber. Now, you remember in Jurassic Park that it was insect amber that they thought maybe they could actually extract DNA from. Well, when you look at this, it makes you think, gee, is that even possible? You know, because it looks like it's possible from this, and you could actually recreate this Jurassic bee, you know, basically. I don't know if that's even possible. It would take a geneticist to answer the question, but I suspect not. But still, even if it degrades over time like that, it was just cool to be able to put it under one of my microscopes and actually see the literal, the little tiny hairs on the abdomen of this thing, see the legs, see the face, the mouth parts of this little tiny Jurassic bee. Amazing. So those were the kinds of those were some of the coolest things I've ever found and ever had. Very impressive. You know, very impressed with the quality of some of these things. I love fossils a lot. I have some from Morocco. I actually have a positive and a negative of a trilobite, where when you disconnect them from each other, you actually see that the top half is the negative of the bottom half, which is a positive. And, you know, that's a really interesting fossil. I suspect that part of it could be a fake, but it was built onto a real one. So I have the real fossil, and then I think the fake shell that comes off. But I'm still impressed with the way it looks, and it looks like a rock from the outside. But then when you pull the top off, whoa! You can see the whole animal. Really neat.
Is there any artifact that you would say is your favorite? What's your favorite thing that you've collected over the time that you would say, well, this is my favorite piece of all?
In general?
Yeah.
Well, probably not in the fossil range. I think that my favorite item overall that I've ever collected is probably actually related to my some of the World War II stuff I have.
Really?
Yeah, my father was in World War II, and he brought home a bunch of stuff. And my favorite thing is an old film he confiscated from Germans, and it shows them on R&R, rest and relaxation. Shows them in their uniforms, drinking and having fun with their friends, sitting on their cars and smoking cigarettes. I mean, it's a moment of peace for these guys. And my son, who's an avid World War II collector, because of that film, that one film, he feels the same way. And it's such a glimpse of life during wartime. But it's the Germans. You're watching the German side, you know. It's just fascinating. So I think that would probably be my favorite thing, and I didn't even collect it. It was given to me by my father, before he passed away, and I was just impressed with it.
Because I know you mentioned that soon you're going to be doing a replica of the Battle of Cologne, I believe.
Well, that's my son Hunter is in film school, and we already acquired and detailed out the special effects tanks.
I saw that.
We
saw
have
that.
there's a Sherman, a Pershing, and a Panzer, and those 3 tanks were figuring prominently in the Battle of Cologne, and we're making buildings, that are going to be to scale with these tanks. So the buildings are going to stand around 4 to 6 feet high, and my driveway is very large. When you were there, you noticed the upper turnaround area of the driveway is 50 feet square, basically. Well, that's big enough for the main street of Cologne. And we're going to lay down a street layer, and then we're going to lay down the buildings. And we're going to make them modular so we can move them around and place them where we want. And depending on the angle you shoot, you'll be able to, it'll look like a whole city. We're going to have a green screen in the back, and we're going to wreck this out in the driveway. And we're probably going to shoot at night with big lights, okay, to replicate this in the way we want. It was a daytime battle, so we want to use it at night, and then we want to shoot during the day, and we want to do a combination of the frames so that we can actually capture some of the detail better.
Now, what is the fine line? Because a lot of people today, we see movies of CGI, and when you do something like this, how difficult is to get the camera angles to make it look as realistic as possible, and can that compare, obviously, with CGI that exists today and replicated through that process?
Well, yeah, CG's computer-generated graphics they have their place. Even Doug Trumbull, who I worked with for 6 years, and he's Academy Award winner. This man has done the visual effects for Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Blade Runner, even 2001, a Space Odyssey with Stanley Kubrick, one of the most famous directors. And even Doug will tell you that there's a place for CG, that is computer-generated graphics. And he doesn't like to rely on it 100%, and I never did either. Now, I made films when I was a kid of spacecraft coming in and getting blasted with lasers, and I didn't use CGI. We created those effects in the camera. We call those practical effects, or straightforward visual effects. I used LED on a stick, a black stick, and I'd bring it in and I'd move it at such a speed that the camera could register the brightness of this red LED. But then when you took it off, right, we'd flash a flash in the location where that was, where it was going to hit. And so it looked like a laser beam coming in and boom, hitting a spacecraft. And then we would tumble the spacecraft. And it would happen all together like a little dance. Okay, in comes a laser beam, poof goes the flash, tumble, tumble, tumble goes the spacecraft. So that means 3 people operating these props all at the same time. And sometimes we had to do it 4 or 5 times to get the timing right and everything. We'd practice it a whole bunch of times. That's what happens when you're kids, for instance, and you have a discrete length of film that you have. You have like a 12-minute length of 8mm film that you want to use, for instance. Nowadays, with digital, totally has changed everything. We don't have to worry about it anymore. We can just do it. We don't like it, we'll just do it again. Don't like it, do it again. Do it in slow motion. Try it again. Try it a different motion. Try a different speed. Try a regular speed. Try it at 240 frames per second. Try it at 1,000 frames per second. What do you get? So we have the ability to make a huge amount of change nowadays because of the digital media. And I really appreciate that. I love it.
Yesterday, Jade and I, we were hanging out with you in the backyard of the hotel, and you were talking some of the things that you had done at an early age. Excuse me. I found it fascinating how you had this creative. I don't want to be. I'm using this because I think it was creative genius. Some of the things that you had done when you were young. And then when I believe you told all of the guys how you painted this room.
Oh yeah.
With the stars.
Yeah, I was a big fan of the universe from age 9, like I told you, and I knew I was going to be an astronomer, professional astronomer. From age 9, I got out. Yeah, and I showed my parents the moon for the first time when I was 9 with this refractor I got as a gift when I got out of the hospital. And I couldn't do much other than look through this telescope at the stars. And I showed them the moon. They looked in it and they said, "Oh, that's fascinating. Oh, that's beautiful. Well done, Marky." They call me Marky. Yes, sorry. And and then looked back in there, and I realized actually I was looking at sort of a lens flare of the moon, and that they were, I led them to believe that I was showing them the moon, but I didn't realize I was actually it was actually just a lens flare. Then when I moved it over, I saw that it was the real moon, and it was even more impressive to me. I was like, "Oh wait, come back! You gotta see, this is the real moon." And they wouldn't come out. They're like, "Oh, we saw it already, thanks." So they humor me.
Yeah.
But and so that I knew from an early age I was going to be an astronomer. And that kind of thing is just and for instance that you're just never going to do anything different. You just know.
Because you also spoke when you were in college. You had done the stars. I think it was almost a panoramic view.
Yeah, you know what I did? Okay, I'm going back to the stars. Because I like the stars so much, in my bedroom at home when I lived with my mother, I decided I wanted the universe on my ceiling. So I had to say, well, I can't just paint the stars. That'll look kind of stupid. And then I looked online, not online, but I looked in the catalogs and stuff, because I went to art stores. And I told them, I want something maybe that glows under black light. So I was going to think maybe getting like fluorescent paints,
right.
That kind of thing. And then I realized, no, I don't think fluorescent paints are going to cut it. And the guy there said, well, what about these glow-in-the-dark paints? He says, you can't tell they're there until you turn the lights off. I said, that's it. That's what I got to have. So I took like jars and jars of this stuff from the art supply store. I probably had it for 10 years. I bought like 5 years too much. Okay. And then I ended up, I went into my room, shut the door. I put black paper on all the windows.
Wow.
And then turned on a light to charge up the can of this paint, and I began to map out on my ceiling where I was going to put all the stars. And my ceiling was flat on top in my bedroom, and then it angled down because it was part of a cape design. So it angled down so that the ceiling wasn't all over your head. Part of it went down about the side of you to a lower wall that would actually be there. So you can actually see that maybe that lower part you'd still see stars if that was the sky. But I said to myself, I want those to be trees with stars showing through. And you can't paint trees on the wall like that unless you actually paint absence of stars for the trees.
Right.
So I had to map out in reverse where the trees were going to be and then make their branches out of the lack of stars. So I picked the Milky Way to go through that so that I had a cloudy mass that I could, use like that. And I made these branches of dead trees sticking up that look really real. And so the bottom line was, at the end of 2 days, I spent 2 days in my room with the door closed, never came out. I didn't even go to the freaking bathroom. Okay? And I had my star charts out, which, by the way, I had treated every single star on the star charts, which were 16 charts, about 12 by 18 inches long. Every single star I painted in glow-in-the-dark paint as well, so that I could see them in the dark.
Now I'm going to ask you this question. Looking back at that now, because of your expertise currently, how would you critique yourself as far as your accuracy of what you did at that age?
Oh, I would say that.
Were you close?
Yeah, I actually worked on getting a deep projected view of the universe so that I could take the flat charts and turn them efficiently.
That's incredible.
Into a sky.
Right.
And it wasn't easy because I almost didn't have the mathematical skills then to do this, but I did figure it out, and I made sure that I could do it. And what ended up happening was I took the sky and I transliterated it from the charts to the sky, blew it up in scale, and I came up with a number that would be what I call the plate scale, the scale from the paper to the sky, in my ceiling. And so I knew that if Orion measured, say, on the paper, 5 inches tall, up on my ceiling it was going to be 12.5 inches tall. And so every single constellation, every star, I measured out to make sure that they were the right distance from each other. I did that for 6,000 stars.
Oh my!
Yeah.
Oh my. That's incredible.
And I did it in 2 days. And I admit that for the fainter stars, I would do the major stars using the measurements. And then the fainter stars I could fill in visually because I had the scales right. And I just made sure I pattern matched. I matched the pattern as on the chart with the one in the sky. But overall, I painted 6,000 distinct stars.
Nice.
Yeah.
And
no doubt.
the only thing is you could only see with your eye 3,000. So
Yeah.
I put more stars on my ceiling than you can actually see. Okay?
So how was that experience when you would lay back in your bed?
When I first turned off the lights, and I'll be very honest, okay, what happened? I laid back.
Vertigo?
Well, when I turned the lights off, okay, I didn't look up at first. Okay? Then when I looked up, I had the strangest feeling. Suddenly, I felt silence of the night. Okay? Now, this was around 4 in the afternoon. And this
Nice.
this was like silence of the night. Incoming monster.
They're
you know,
playing with the camera right now.
Yeah, you think?
It's they should be done.
When I saw I felt the silence of the night, and I looked up and I just couldn't believe it, and then I laid down and looked up because this was in my bedroom, and when I looked up at the ceiling, I just took in the sight, and I literally I found myself breathing shallow, as if something was wrong with me. I was like, oh. I was excited. I was so excited by seeing this in my sky. It looked incredibly real to me. So much so that I almost didn't know what to do with it.
Wow.
And then
so your senses were pretty much
they were blown away. And then when I
Right.
got up, I kept my eyes closed. I stood up and I looked toward my quote unquote horizon where the ceiling dips down to see how I did with my trees. And it looked for all the world like I was looking through freaking trees at the Milky Way beyond. And it was so real that I was utterly blown away. I couldn't believe how good it actually ended up looking.
Now, my next question is, because I just have to be
And that's not the
curious.
first place I did that.
And then after
curious
that, I've
that-
got a question for you after
Go ahead.
Bill does.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Tyler. Go ahead first.
I was gonna, okay. If you were ever given an opportunity,
I would go,
What-
yes.
what?
I would go, yes. Oh, sorry, what are you going to ask?
Yeah, if you were ever given a chance to go to either Mars or the moon, would you go?
I would actually go to the moon because then I know I could have a chance of getting home. Going to Mars is probably a one-way trip right now, and eventually it'll be a two-way trip. But right now it's only a one-way trip until we actually have an established corridor of travel that we're going to maintain between the two distances.
Now, the thing I just wanted to ask quickly, after you had done that sky, did you go to the next step and start putting planets hanging from the ceiling? I mean, how far did this go?
I had to be realistic about it. I wanted realism, and I did not ever put planets hanging from the ceiling.
Wow.
And the reason I didn't is because you wouldn't see them. You wouldn't see them like that.
Right.
They would only be bright spots in the sky,
Right.
and I had to have an absolutely real
You wanted to
sky.
make it as accurate of a portrayal
Yes.
of what a person would see
That's right.
if they were actually looking up at the night sky.
That's right. Sirius was very bright. Okay, it was made of a much larger amount of the green, the glow in the dark stuff, and that was really just an unbelievable process.
And I'm asking you these questions. Why? Because I want people to know the intimate side of Mark. A little bit of that background. Because I'm sure we're all familiar about his knowledge and his background as far as astronomy. What I'm trying to get to this is to see the other side of Mark. Some of the things that he did at an early age, and where I'm going to go.
Oh,
with
I can tell you some really.
I can
funny
imagine. I'm going to ask you, before we can get into some of that stuff more, I want to ask you, during your education, when you were going to college,
Yeah.
was there anything that the professors gave you, or an assignment, a paper, that you were taken aback and said, whoa, this is going to be something that's going to take me to a whole new level? You knew that this was going to be a challenge, and maybe you exceeded the expectations even of your professors.
Let's see. I did take one course because I had an elective, and I had to actually do. There was a class called Christian Doctrine. I wasn't terribly interested. I wasn't terribly interested in the class, but I was made to take it because I needed that elective, and it was sort of like one of the only remaining classes. So I did it, and I had to do a paper in the class, and I chose to do a paper called God and the Astronomers. And I actually, I called it that, and I actually did a comparison of doctrine that we hear about growing up in church and all that. And I'm not religious, believe me. Okay, I don't really do much with it. And I found myself saying that I was comparing everything to the way the Bible said the Earth came about, and then I compared it to science, and I tried to draw parallels that would say, here is how the misunderstandings could have come about, where if you read in the Bible it says it was 7 days. Well, what are 7 days? Did that really mean it was each day 150 million years or 250 million years? What is that? I don't get it. And that kind of thing is, and so I went through the whole thing, and I actually created a paper which actually ended up causing a little bit of a stir, because it was being taught. The class was being taught by a reverend who had no use for what I was trying to tell him about science, And I wasn't trying to be disruptive, but so that's a class that was kind of weird for me, And I think after that class is when I went back to my dorm room, actually. And I think that evening, when I delivered that paper and we listened to the critiques, I think that's actually the night when I went back and I did the glow-in-the-dark stars floor to ceiling in my room, everywhere. So that if you walked into the room, you felt like you were suddenly flying in space, because under your feet, on the walls, everywhere were stars. And you had no idea where the stars started or ended. It was really... And so I made this like spherical starscape that you were living within when you walked into my room. And people would actually come into my room after being out for a while, drinking and worse. And they would just hang out in my room just going, wow, because they were just freaked by because it really, really monkeyed with your head. And I thought that was my goal.
That was almost like the party place to be.
It was the party place to be, and I never got any sleep because of those. So I had to start wiping them out, and I ended up, they were acrylic, so I could actually just use water and scrub them away. But it was just incredible.
Why do you think that individuals in general may be so skeptical
Dave, you're funny.
About the research? I'm saying in the scientific method, the evidence, the data, and people refuse to look at it and be objective and say, well, these are actually the facts. Instead of maybe being intolerant or ignorant to these facts.
Well, and Deirdre, no, I don't have any pictures, which kind of is weird. I don't have any shots. I wish I did. Actually,
I only asked you that because you brought in an interesting aspect when it comes to religious texts, and it seems a few thousand years in comparison to the planet existing for millions.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people doubt carbon dating such and such as as being is it something that can be actually validated? Is it credible? A lot of people question when people come out with scientific facts. So is that something that's really that is difficult for you when you're trying to put this all out there, while other people are maybe saying, well, they're doubting whatever what a scientist in general would say?
I don't mind the conflict, because the conflict starts discussion, and the discussion reaches resolution, and usually it errs on the side of proper science. Because the bottom line is that if someone tries to argue and they don't have the actual facts, they will lose. They'll lose against the actual facts.
Right.
because the actual facts stand alone, and a theory that they may have that doesn't utilize those facts has to stand on its own without any basis.
Right.
And those two things don't go together. It can't stand alone without any basis.
And what I'm leading to is your work in MUFON. Because I'm sure there's been a lot of individuals within the field, some more notable than others, that may have had so-called what they thought was a smoking gun or irrefutable evidence, and it's presented to you because you are the analyst of for MUFON.
Yeah.
And I'm sure even in that aspect they give this, and when you come back and say, "Oh, it was something else," it must be frustrating as you know, for them as well when you come out with that answer.
It is,
because you're dealing with the scientific research and the facts.
It is, and I try to make it clear that my ideas are only my thoughts.
Right.
And I don't try to say...
But it's an expert opinion.
It is an opinion that is based on a lot of activity in that arena, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I do have a background that tends to err on the side of caution, but I also tend to look at the facts that I have in front of me, and I make a case based on the facts, and say, based on what you show me, it could be this X, Y, and Z. It can't be what you're saying, Q, L, and M, because of these facts out here. You know, it looks like X, it looks like Y, it looks like Z. I don't see your Q, L, and M facts in here. So I have to err on the side of X, Y, and Z. And a lot of people don't like to hear that, including some fairly high-ranking people in MUFON.
That's yeah.
I've gone up against, you know, some like state directors who have this predisposed opinion that what they're looking at is a UFO and they don't want to hear anything otherwise. But when I see it, I can clearly see that it's not a UFO. In fact, it's something I know very well, and it's something that I have analyzed before.
And I think it's really significant that with your background, I think instead of MUFON becoming some type of, one of these organizations that is trying to say alien, UFO, and make it more, I think, on the level where people can say, well, this is something that I think can be credible, that it's believable. When a person like you is taking on these cases and coming at it from the scientific aspect, and you're saying, well, this and this and this is pretty much, I don't want to say debunked because I don't consider you a debunker. All you're doing is going out there and doing the research and analyzing the footage and, you know, determining what it could be. And I think that's so significant because, again, it gives MUFON as a whole something to fall back on. You know, it's just one of those things that makes it more legitimate when they have people like you, other than just going out there and saying, well, UFO number 56789, case number, and reported this with photos and video evidence. But meanwhile, they can say that and it's there, but has it been analyzed?
Yeah.
And you are vetting that part.
Yeah, and you know, as much as I might see something over and over again that looks the same to me, I don't just say, oh, that's just another one of these. I actually put it through the paces because I don't want to do a disservice. Because what if what this person shows looks similar to, say, a Chinese lantern, but it's not?
Right, exactly.
You know, I have to be able to look at this and see if there's anything different about this, you know?
And you know what? This is why when he has his channel, and I'm gonna hand the chair over to Commander Keith behind me in a second.
You mean the one who's coining Dantonium as an element?
But I think it's gonna be...
Jay Rich made me laugh there. Mark Fon, that was funny.
I think it's gonna be fascinating to see your stream because, again, it's gonna be educational. Who knows what you'll see while you're observing the skies. But one thing, like, if Keith gets something or I get something, I can't even tell you how much it is an honor and privilege to have someone that can look at our stuff and know that this person, regardless if he comes back and says, Bill, it was a balloon. Or Bill, it's a bug. What's wrong with you? And I'm not going to take offense. You know why? Because it's all about respect and knowing this man is going to do what he does, and he's going to give me a straightforward answer.
Yeah, but I'm not going to be sarcastic like that,
No,
though, and
never,
say, Bill,
never,
what's wrong
never
with you?
that.
It's a bug.
Never that.
I wouldn't say that. But
No.
I would be, I would just, see, here's the thing. When I tell people what I think it is,
Right.
I'm not making a pronouncement.
Right.
I'm saying, here's what I believe it is. And, we can talk about this, but I'll share with you my knowledge so you can understand why I think what I do about what you just took a photograph of.
Right.
See, I, more than many people, recognize the ability of cameras to photograph ordinary things in a most extraordinary manner.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, now, say that again slowly. Photographing ordinary things in a most extraordinary manner. That's what cameras will do, depending on the angle. The camera is unbiased. It doesn't have the interpretive capability that you do when you look at something that's flying by with your eyes.
Right.
Your brain automatically makes sense of objects that fly through the field while you're taking pictures.
It's almost looking like at a painting. You see it in the dimension. It's just a flat piece of paper with writing on it. But then our brains interpret it into an image.
Yeah.
Because simply it's just lines and shadows and everything on a piece of. I mean, it's just. But when our brains are able to put that together and to make it into a picture.
Right, and when we look at something on the screen that we've taken a video of, for instance, and it looks odd to us, we're seeing the unbiased view that the camera took.
Right.
And now we're then interpreting it again with our brains and saying, ooh, what is that? I didn't see that when I took the video. But you may have and ignored it. And that's the thing that is so important to understand. You might have ignored it because your mind tends to overlook the obvious. It overlooks the ordinary, and it overlooks the things that you see every day.
Right.
I've seen so many images and photos and video where people say, I didn't see this when I took the video, but here it is. And it's a photo of what appears to be, say, an insect flying through the field. They saw the insect unconsciously, most likely, flying through the field, or maybe it went too fast, they blinked when it went through, whatever. But when we see ordinary objects, we allow them to pass through. We don't pay attention. We don't consciously say, I'll have to remember that was actually a bug flying through the field. We don't remember that. And then when you take the picture, you go back later and look at it, and you've captured the ordinary object in a most extraordinary way. And so that makes you feel, whoa, that's something cool. I better submit that.
Right. And I'm sure also when a person's holding a camera or a phone, you got to take into account the movements, the lighting.
That happens.
Yeah, I mean,
Totally happens.
I see people saying they're looking at an object moving in the sky, and it's simply they're moving the camera around. It can be as simple as something like that.
Yeah, and there's a number of research projects that have been done at the Stanford Research Center, Stanford University, and the Eye Institute, which show that. And see, I'm not talking from just my experience. I'm actually using actual medical results of data at times, and this is a case where we actually see that objects that are seen in the sky where there's nothing else around to reference anything. All right, to reference the object, to size or location, they can be as near or as far as people imagine them to be. That's why, and I've said this, and many, many people have said this, 10 different people will view the same event 10 different ways, okay? And that's why.
Absolutely.
It's proven that it's a very subjective view. Now, the other thing is, to be an image analyst like what I do, you can't just know astronomy, you can't just know cameras, you also have to know human anatomy and physiology and evolution. You have to understand that our eyes are a certain number of inches apart because that gives us depth perception only to a certain degree, out to about a few hundred feet. Beyond that, our depth perception starts to fall apart. That is an issue because people are trying to estimate, quote unquote, distances to objects that may be out in the far distance, or they're close by, okay? And our feeling is that, we don't know We don't know how far they are, but the study shows that there isn't any way to tell. People can't gauge those distances. They're incapable. They're unable to do it. And that's a limitation. That's not someone saying we don't think you can do it. That's a limitation on the human body. It's a limitation based on our wiring, our plumbing, and our layout. Okay? The eyes being a certain distance apart give us depth perception out to the distance necessary from our evolutionary days, through the evolution of our species, to gauge where a threat's coming from and how far away it is. These, for the terrestrial animal that are we, was the predator that wants us, that wants to use us, make us lunch. Makes us, a predator seeing us as a pork chop is the reason why our eyes are set apart the way they are, so that we can accurately perceive the distance the threat is from us.
Now, I'm going to ask you one question, then I'm going to hand over the chair to Keith, because I got to go check out what's going on outside. It seems like they're going a little wild with the camera. I believe, let me scroll up, because he had an interesting question. I want to hear your perspective on it. Jay wanted to know, what do you think of mass hallucinations of UFOs by witnesses?
I'll explain how they happen, and kind of not. I don't know how to explain what I think about them, because you can't.
You can't, because you can't. Every
lump
incident
them.
is different.
Yeah,
right.
You can't lump them together.
Exactly.
But I will answer the question.
Okay, let's use the Phoenix Lights, for example.
Well, I can answer the question in general.
Okay.
I know Lin Kitai. She's wonderful. Okay. But let's take a look at objects now. Let's say now you call them mass hallucinations. I put it to you with something different. It's sympathetic viewing. If you see something in the sky and you say to me, do you see that? Look at that thing there. Look at that thing in the sky. Right? Look at that thing in the sky. And you go, and the other guy next to you says, well, yeah, I think I see it. And now he'll convince himself he sees it. Okay? Because you see it. So it's got to be there. So I believe Bill. So yeah, it's there. Then another guy comes along. Yeah, the two of us see that thing in the sky. Do you see that? And he'll say, well, yeah, I think I do. And before long, you got 10 people all saying they see the same thing in the sky when only one person thinks he does, and it may not even be right. And that's how this starts. That becomes a mass, what they're calling a mass hallucination. It's not a mass hallucination. It's a sympathetic view. I believe you, so therefore I think it's there too, and I can kind of see it myself. And they kind of make it look like it's there in their minds, you know?
It's interesting.
By the way, for the people in chat, I'm not the one typing the comments under my name.
That's
so you
me.
know.
That's Bill
Okay?
typing. I got a big mic in front of me, Keith's mic.
You know?
It's funny because today Jade and I were walking, and Keith, in the Pine Bush Festival, and Jade starts pointing at the sky, and that's exactly what happened. All of a sudden, everybody's, because now he's saying, point up, point up. Everybody's looking at the sky. And all it was a couple of planes, but everybody started looking up. It wasn't it. It was priceless. Because
And
everybody,
that's not a mass hallucination. That's
No,
that's
it's
sympathetic viewing.
Yes.
Now that's my term for it. I don't know what other people would call it, what psychologists would call it. I call it. Yeah.
It's nosy old humans trying to find that thing in the sky, Eunice.
Okay, so I think that's true, but it's a sympathetic view.
Yeah.
You're anxious to be part of it. You're anxious to see it too, and so if other people are seeing it or saying they're seeing it, well then you're gonna see it too. Darn
Imagination a little bit kicks in.
A little bit, but it's not. That's not. There's no ulterior motive. There's no awful evil motive to that. It's just a desire to see something interesting and cool, and sometimes you convince yourself it's there even if it's not. That's not all UFO cases, of course. That's not all UFO sightings, no, but it is some of them. And that's the thing that you have to kind of weed out. People, for instance, see meteor. Let's take meteors. You see meteor in the sky, not on a sky view where you can skywatch, where you can actually go back and see it.
Exactly.
But when you see it with your eye, oh, I just saw a meteor. And the other guy who may not have seen this says, I think I did too. But what he's thinking he saw might be something from knowing what meteors look like, and he thought he might have seen it out of the corner of his eye.
Right.
He may have, or he may not have.
Right. So, again,
I saw someone, by the way, in the chat say, and this is for you, Keith. They said, I'd like to see me with Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah, I think Keith's got that in the works, eh?
I don't know if he does.
Yeah. So now I'm gonna hand it over to Keith because I gotta check these people that they're not gonna. They're doing their thing in front of my camera, so I gotta check on what's going on outside. Because the party right here is the serious side. Outside, they're a little on the wild side. So I'm gonna step out, and Keith is gonna take over. And everyone, it was great to speak with you, and it's an absolute pleasure to have Mark here in the house with all of us. And again, he is. I have to say, I consider him a really good friend, and it's an honor to know this man.
And all of us are breathing helium when we want to, because it's really fun.
And I'm telling you, I cannot wait.
We have helium. Okay, we're breathing. Okay, hey, Keith, you gonna come over and help out
it's
here?
It's your turn. Come on. Get in the chair. What?
I think he's kind of a dick.
Well, I'm going outside.
Okay, well, Keith's coming over to talk too.
Later, everyone.
Okay, Bill yelling.
Hey,
Is Clem is here? Is Clem here?
No, that was Tana.
Oh my God.
Sound machine, please.
I'm out of here.
Wow, I think that's pretty cool.
So
All right.
what I missed.
All right, I came back
You want to
here.
go ahead and repeat all that you just said? Or
Sure,
that's
let me
what you meant?
rewind. Let me rewind, boss.
Thank you.
Yeah.
She's on hold.
She's on hold. Yeah.
Put us on hold.
She put us on hold. She's
Cat go in the background.
taking another call. That's okay. So I think it's kind of funny. I really respect Neil deGrasse Tyson. I think that he offers up a really interesting perspective, and I think he's someone that maybe, and it's not conscious on my part, but I think the two of us actually treat people the same way. Mm-hmm. We don't want to talk over their heads. We want to make people understand. Yep. And if people can't understand what we're saying, we're doing it wrong. That's how I feel. Because I feel that the goal is, I may know more about astronomy. You may know more about another topic, another thing that I don't. And I would want you to teach me, and I would like to teach you. I would want to make sure we share information. Because that's how we progress, sharing information. And so that's all it is, And so a man like Neil deGrasse Tyson, the guy's, he's really good at what he does. He's got a very, very big microphone, so to speak, okay? Yeah. And I think that he's very good at what he does.
Yes, very good.
Yeah. So it's it would be an honor to actually be able to talk with him and spend time with him.
It's not easy to become a science rock star. You know what I mean? You had very few before him. You had with the Mr. Wizards, and of course Bill Nye.
Help, Mr. Wizard!
All of a sudden, of course Carl Sagan.
Yep.
And now, pretty much Neil's picked up that torch and started running with it. And of course
Carl,
you have,
Yes. Carl Sagan is one of my favorite scientists of all time.
You live on a big blue
If you have 1,000 matches and your opponent only has 900 matches in a room full of gasoline, who has more military might? That was a famous analogy he made.
Bunch of might, but which one passed gas?
Now, the one that gets to me is the one about the dead cat.
The dead cat?
Yeah, where if you put a cat in a box,
Schrodinger's cat.
and with a bunch of gas and everything, if you don't observe it dies, it's still alive.
Yeah, it's called a felony.
Well, no, it's. Damn it.
That isn't what you did when you put us on hold, was it?
We saw your.
No!
Oh boy, look out! There's a seal in the room.
No,
she has
sure.
officially lost it.
Welcome to the EIB network, my friends.
Welcome to EIB. We're gonna get this broadcast off as long as I can get some oxytocin.
Damn.
Damn.
You realize I'm really fucking stoned right now, right?
Welcome to the Mark D'Antonio channel.
Thank you for announcing that on my channel.
That has now officially
Sorry,
went
damn
to
it, I'm
18
sorry.
plus.
I'm sorry. Damn, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Oh, yeah.
Mega Dittos from Jay Rich.
Yeah, right.
Oh man, I'm
it's
just
good.
gonna shut up now.
Beautiful night out.
Yeah, we actually do have a fairly clear night, and what's coming up after Lyra, the constellation Lyra, which is now at the top of the screen, is the constellation Cygnus. And Cygnus is the northern swan. It's the swan. It's also known as the Northern Cross. And within Cygnus, there are a huge number, or as Carl Sagan might say, a huge number of celestial wonders to see. And I think that it'll be really pretty to look at these through the telescope. In fact, one of the things I'm planning on doing is just passing slowly through the major star fields within that constellation with the telescope. You're going to see the star fields, as we move through them very slowly, and it's just endless. And you look at the sheer number of stars, and you watch these, and you say, wow, there's thousands of stars we're seeing right here, it seems. And the bottom line is that even with that, in the exoplanet world, planets around other stars world, there are more planets than stars in the universe. And so as many stars as you can see, you know that there's easily several times more of that in planets around these stars and around many stars. It turns out that stars with planets are the norm as opposed to the exception. There was a time when they were considered the exception and not the rule. And that's now no longer true. We know that. So, the time will come when we're going to be seeing a quote-unquote federation of the planets, all right, that we will have established, or that we might be establishing. We already, have established the Prime Directive. I don't know if you were aware of that. The Prime Directive in Star Trek says that they cannot interfere with developing civilizations, right? Well,
Right.
the truth is, if we go and look right now at what we're doing at Jupiter with the Juno mission, that's Juno, the Juno mission. The Juno mission is a polar orbiting satellite that's going around Jupiter and is taking unprecedented imagery of the cloud bands around Jupiter. It's a stunning mission, producing stunning results. However, there is a distant, remote, dim chance that this probe could collide with Jupiter's moon Europa in the distant future. So to prevent that, they actually have decided to crash it into Jupiter and not just let it keep orbiting Jupiter. They're going to destroy it to avoid contamination of Europa. And they're doing it because it's sort of a prime directive of the United States and of the world, the ESA and NASA. This is something that's very interesting. We are actually developing I'll say it this way, a savior mentality for life off the world. This, is indicative of a civilization that's reached a turning point. Yes. We've reached a turning point where we believe that what we've been doing on our planet may not have been the best, and we're not going to do it to another one. Think about that. This means that technically it's possible we've made it. It's possible we've actually gotten past the most dangerous time in our civilization. No, you do. No. So, but it's possible. I'm not saying that's going to happen for sure, but it's possible. And I think that's a great thing. Don't you, Keith?
Absolutely.
I've got a question for you, Mark.
I got an answer.
What is your favorite of all the planets to really study?
Well, my favorite planet is usually typically the Nibiru. Get out of here. No, the favorite planet I have, my favorite planet to study is actually the one that we know the least about. Yeah, I know you were going to say Earth. No, it's not the Earth, but that's close. No, my favorite planet is Pluto. I still think that it qualifies as a planet by default because of the nature of its orbit and the nature of how it was captured out of the Kuiper Belt. The Kuiper Belt, spelled Kuiper, pronounced Kuiper. The Kuiper Belt is out beyond the orbit of Neptune, at, between 40 and 50 astronomical units from the sun. And remember, an AU is 93 million miles, so we're not talking nearby. And the Kuiper Belt objects out past Neptune are called trans-Neptunian objects, meaning they're out past Neptune. Makes sense.
Right.
Well, they considered Pluto a dwarf planet now because it's in that Kuiper Belt trans-Neptunian area. And it's not actually in a normal orbit. It's sort of in a highly inclined orbit to our plane of the orbits in our solar system. And that kind of does make it stand out differently. So I'm on the fence with whether it's a planet or a dwarf planet, actually. But for one season of What on Earth, one of the stories I get like 10 to 15 stories to do per season, and for one of those, I had to do what are called the snails on Pluto. And what they are is these apparent large objects that are in these furrows on Pluto that look like giant snails. Okay?
Wow.
Now, clearly, they're not giant snails, and clearly those furrows, to scientists, are actually the remains of these convection cells from within Pluto that have risen up to resurface the surface of Pluto, because these are in areas on Pluto where there's no craters. It's been resurfaced over and over by recent material. Recent being, a few million years, as opposed to like last month. Okay? So this resurfacing that takes place very slowly, and it's all cold resurfacing. It's being done by the freezing temperatures on Pluto and the warmth inside Pluto that's being generated by its interactions and so forth. Now, that particular dwarf planet has some very interesting features. The surface is made of solid nitrogen. Okay, gas, right? It's nitrogen gas, but it's solid nitrogen. And those snails rising up out of the plains on Pluto in these areas of these furrows, of these convection cell borders, these snails are actually made of water ice. And the water ice and nitrogen ices are so high that they actually they rise off the surface of the nitrogen ices and form these gigantic spires, which look really odd. And now the thing is that these objects are actually known for not moving at all. They're just objects that are there. They're kind of like warts or pimples. Yeah. Yeah, they're warts or pimples on the surface of Pluto, and so we've learned an awful lot about that planet. Pluto actually has a small atmosphere. When seen by backlight, when the New Horizons probe zoomed by Pluto, when it looked back toward Pluto with the sun behind it, we can actually see these arcing high-altitude clouds of nitrogen on Pluto. The atmosphere is mostly nitrogen. That stands to reason, because the ices on the surface are mostly nitrogen ices. So if those sublimate, they're going to sublimate to nitrogen, and some of that atmosphere is trapped. So Pluto is the most interesting to me, and it has some areas of dark brownish red on it and areas of white. The dark brownish red are very interesting too, because that indicates some kind of impurity in the ices, and that's something that we don't. Well, the New Horizons probe, they have chemical compositions and so forth, but Pluto's been surprising to us, so that's like my favorite.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I know it's a long answer. I apologize.
No, I liked it though. I liked it. You seriously should have your own show on Discovery or TLC.
Well, I'll do one with Keith.
Hey!
Well,
I'll get fired just as quick.
Well, you might.
No, you fire him. You fired that
I
guy.
resemble that.
Fire him, yes. No. No, you fire him, yes.
That's right. What's her name?
Tana.
What?
Tana?
No, I know her.
Oh.
But on Family Guy, the housekeeper. What's her name? I can't remember. Yeah.
Is it Rosa?
Is it Rosa?
No.
Yeah. Who's it? What's her name?
I don't remember what her name is.
Okay.
Are you talking about quagmires of
Giggity,
Break it.
giggity, goo. No. Not talking about her, Peter.
No, I'm talking about who's the housekeeper? The Manuela. No,
Something like that.
is it Manuela? Yeah. Peter
said
would say,
Manuela.
Manuela, can you pick this up?
No, no, you do, you do.
You know. No. And then Stewie would say like, come on, you fat bitch, what's wrong? You pick this stuff up. You know.
Mark, do you want to answer Dave's question before he literally reaches through the screen and slaps us both?
Oh, what if a planet? Yeah, don't slap us both, Dave. What if a planet
right.
killer size, a killer asteroid like the Dino Killer hit the moon? What would happen? Boom.
Take care now, Bubba, then.
No, actually, I'd answer that, Dave. When you consider that impacts were very common in the early solar system. In fact, there was a major impact of what we think is a Mars-sized impactor that hit the Earth to create the moon. And that was like, bam, done. We got the same sound effects.
Yeah.
Dripping water.
Yeah, we were doing that
Yeah,
literally all
we're
day.
doing that. That's crazy.
To the point where we were just looking at one another and doing it to poor old people walking down the
I'm
street.
getting I'm getting to your end. I did not do that, so
Bad
I did
influence.
not do that. I did, however, do that in an elevator full of people.
It's an even trade. He teaches me science, I teach him fart noises. It's
Yeah,
just,
well,
just straight up.
And Dave, I am going to answer your question, I promise. But a little aside, I was actually in a bank as a consultant working, and I had all these stuffy people in the elevators every day going up and down. They don't talk to you; they just look straight ahead. Because
Yeah.
remember, there's not much to do in the elevator except not look at the other guy.
They're always the dangerous
Okay,
ones.
so I actually would just sit there looking straight ahead. And one day I decided, you know what? I'm just gonna change it all up. And I was in the elevator with my friend Jim, and there were literally about 15 people in there, really, really packed in like sardines. It was the end of the day. So I went like this. I'm looking straight ahead, and I went, and then I looked at Jim and went, oh, and everybody thought he did something. And I never saw more people look at Jim and with disgust, and then they try to move away, but there's no place to go, so they're all packing against each other, and there's like a hole around Jim of space. It was hilarious.
Hey, full of clearance.
It was actually fun. So I'm sorry about that. So Dave, getting back to your question where you asked if Gollum was real, no.
My precious.
The truth is that a killer asteroid, if it hit the moon, the first problem we would have is the fallout from that. And I don't mean nuclear fallout. I mean rock fallout. Mm-hmm. If something did hit the moon, it depends on the direction it's going. If it came from sunward and the moon was outward from us at that time, it might strike the moon and send a lot of the particles beyond the moon and out into deep space, and we might be rescued from some of the major impactors, but certainly not all. We would get pelted with some major asteroid-sized chunks, perhaps 10 to 20. Even if the impact was going the other way, there's still going to be a rebound effect of this material. We might get 10 to 20 of the Earth, the Yucatan dino killers hitting us over time, and we would probably know they're coming because scientists could quickly predict these orbits and figure that, well, on the 100th orbit, this asteroid's going to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere, probably over Europe, and destroy most of Central Europe, and thus plunge us into nuclear winter. And that's just if one hits us. Okay.
Yeah, went to battery.
And we're
We'll
all
get
going to
that
go
fixed.
quiet now for a moment of darkness with our camera.
Do not go quiet into that good night.
Do not go quietly into the night. So, but an asteroid just hit the sky. So the fact is, if that hit the moon, you have to imagine that there's a lot of debris that's going to be thrown up into space. And the moon doesn't have a big escape velocity like the Earth. Okay, the escape velocity in the moon is going to be much smaller than the Earth's, and so anything thrown up there would have a much greater chance of escaping the moon. But then, it's going to fall into the Earth's gravity well. That's what we call the gravitational force of the Earth, the gravity well of the Earth, and end up falling into our atmosphere. There's an off chance that something like that could end up going into orbit around the Earth in some strange way if just the right conditions were met. So that's a possibility. We don't know that, but it's possible. And so it's Consuela, that's right. And it's very possible that an object from that collision would end up being in orbit, and then we'd have a moon with a newly molten area that's being flooded by the melted material that the impact caused, because those impacts generate a massive amount of heat and a giant shockwave. Now, it would have to be a massive asteroid, and one the size of the one that killed the dinosaurs. I mean, 10 miles across, maybe. Okay, one that size wouldn't even budge the moon. It wouldn't move it anywhere. The moon would suck it up, take it, smash. You get smashed. Okay. Look out! Speaking of smash, look out, folks. We're gonna go for a little ride in that camera in just a minute. But the fact is that if we were to consider that that impactor would throw so much shit up into, to be honest, stuff up into the lunar orbit, we would find that most of that stuff would actually come back down and hit the Earth, because most likely the impact isn't going to be in such a way that it's going to protect the Earth. It'd probably most likely be from higher up in the solar system, where something got whipped around and then came down through the plane of the ecliptic, the plane of the orbits, and whacked it really hard, and then that would splash out in all directions, including toward the Earth. We'd get a lot of direct impacts. We would get a lot of impacts that were delayed, and we would get a lot of impacts that were delayed by more than, like, say, a couple months as the stuff started to filter down. Either way, it would spell a tremendous disaster for our planet, because whether it's moon rock or fractured asteroid particles that come in, they would definitely do some serious damage. And if it was smaller particles that got mostly burned up in the atmosphere, you would think, well, it would be okay. But there's something else that happens there. Those particles and the other elements, those other asteroids coming in, the things that are the size of, between, say, 4 feet and, say, 50 feet across, that would enter the Earth's atmosphere, would also do something else. Even if they were to burn up entirely, they would superheat the atmosphere. And that superheating would cause problems. That would cause the local area underneath where they come in to be superheated as well. And this would spell disaster for the local ecosystems under there, because it would easily surpass flame temperatures. They would probably burst into flames. So forest fires all over the world would start. That smoke would go up into the air. That would blot out the sun worldwide for many years to come, and it would cause a disaster based on the fact that the objects hitting the Earth itself would throw up a lot of dust and a lot of material. Even an object that hits the ocean, you would think, well, it would just make a big splash. Actually, an asteroid hitting the Earth at 30,000 kilometers an hour, would go right to the bottom of the ocean in no time and blast ocean floor back up out into the atmosphere and around the Earth. So it's not like, something like that would actually just go for a splash and make a tsunami. No, that's not what it would do. And so we would get the tsunami, but we would also get a lot of the ocean floor under that impact getting thrown up into the atmosphere. Nuclear winter, I say nuclear winter, you know what I mean, the false winter brought about by atmospheric cooling from particulates in the atmosphere, mostly in the stratosphere, would go worldwide, and probably for 100 years or more, we would end up having this stuff up in the atmosphere. Very, very hard to get it out. There's no way to clean the atmosphere.
Mini extinction event?
It could be a mini extinction event or a maxi extinction event. It depends on, but that's a good point. And, there'd be a point where we would actually possibly have.
It would more depend on the food.
Yeah, and we know that the food supply would immediately be, that the food chain, in fact, would be immediately affected. What will be the first thing to die? Plants? Keith, right? Yeah. Right, okay.
I want my cheeseburger.
Yeah. Plants will be the first thing to die.
Yep.
And plankton in the ocean that create the oxygen we breathe, they're the primary oxygen creators, you know. There's not the trees and the forests. It's actually plankton in the ocean that are creating the oxygen you breathe more than any other creature, more than any other life form here on this planet. So that said, I think we want to consider that if the clouds were to come from this pall of material thrown up in the upper atmosphere, the plankton would die off, the plants would die off. The creatures that feed on the plankton, like baleen whales and other creatures of the sea, would die off. We would lose a lot of plants and animals down in the Amazon basin, and those animals that depend on the other animals for survival would die too.
Right up the food chain.
It goes right up the food chain, and that food chain ends with us.
Vegetarians.
It ends with us.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
that too.
That too, yeah. And so we would be affected. We would find certain foods are scarce if available at all. Some food might shoot back. Yeah, well, I mean, if you're talking about eating your fellow man or something, I guess that's possible.
Yes.
So, you know, I think maybe it's possible that would be really in a mini extinction event, like you said.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Agree.
Yeah. So,
Devastating.
So Rich, you're saying, Rich, you're saying couldn't having plankton pools in the highly polluted. Well, plankton make oxygen. They don't take out pollution. In fact, the pollution might kill the plankton. So, I mean, I recognize your idea. Yeah, it's like wah wah wah. It'd be nice. I think it'd be great if it could work, but I think that plankton would be sensitive to that. You know, plankton are sensitive to, you know, some of the different animals in the ocean that rise up, and I think that maybe it's possible that there could be a way to make them survive, but they're not pollution eaters. They're oxygen generators, and that's something we have to keep in mind. And I think you like the answer, Dave. Thanks, but that's just my thought, you know. But you know, it's important to understand where the stuff that we need to live comes from. You know, and it is the ocean. And I want to mention something too about the ocean, which I think is really fascinating. You remember the BP oil spill from a few years ago? You remember that, Keith?
Mm-hmm.
The BP oil spill was touted as a oil spill of the century. It was going to destroy the Gulf of Mexico. That's what we were told.
Yep.
Well, the fact is, over and over. Now, I actually talked to and called and made contact with and was having daily conversations with the CEO of a major oil company when that was happening, because his equipment was on the bottom trying to cap this well that had blown out, and I was calling him, offering suggestions and trying to, you know, see if where he was going was a place that I could help with or whatever. And he enjoyed my ideas. He was sending me update photos, which are really good, but I had live feeds going the whole time of the ocean floor, watching this methane and oil concoction boiling out of this broken blowout preventer, which was the thing that's supposed to prevent exactly what happened. And through a series of fatal errors, this machine on the bottom that was supposed to keep that well capped failed. And we ended up getting this massive, you know, several 100 million gallons of oil and methane spewed. Now, here's what I have to say about all this. People were saying that the ocean was going to die. They were saying that there were going to be dead zones created by this methane all around the ocean, especially in the Gulf of Mexico. They said the Gulf of Mexico was going to be dead. What actually happened? Within 2 years, this massive methane bloom was gone. Where did it go? Well, it went into the quote-unquote bellies of the massive proliferation of methane-eating bacteria that bloomed and grew to take advantage of the new food source. You see, the Earth has a way of correcting the problems itself. And this is something that we...
Reminds me of what George Carlin once said. It's like, don't worry, people, the planet isn't going anywhere. We are.
We are, yeah, right,
It's gonna
exactly.
shake us off like a dog shaking off some fleas.
That's right. That's right. So the Earth has a way of fixing its own problems, and this is exactly what we see here. It generated the methane-eating bacteria in droves to take over and to kill the methane bloom. And it's not a conscious thing. It's how the Earth evolved. It's the species that evolved to do this job. Now, the next thing that happened was we have all this oil. There was a lot of it. A lot of it went to the surface, but what happens when it gets to the surface? It doesn't stay there. If it doesn't reach the shoreline, it eventually sinks back down to the bottom and forms what were called colloquially tar balls. And they would roll around on the bottom, absorb dirt and other material, and you have these rolling balls of gelatinous goo on the bottom. And you think, oh no, it's ruined, the ocean's ruined. But the true thing is that these tar balls on the bottom ended up being something that worked out for us, because once again the Earth provides a solution. And what it did was, these tar balls rolling along on the bottom ended up getting reabsorbed because of the material they were absorbing. And the material they were absorbing was crude oil. That is to say, a material that the Earth has been absorbing for billions of years. Meaning, every year, all over the oceans of the world, there are these oil seeps, they're called. S-E-E-P-S. Seeps. And these seeps are places where the oil deep in the Earth's crust actually works its way out and bubbles up into the ocean. That's pollution. And the Earth is polluting this itself to the tune of billions of gallons a year. So how is it that this can happen, and when we lose 200 million gallons in a few weeks, we say, well, the oceans are going to die? How can that be when the oceans are generating billions of gallons of seeps worldwide and dealing with it? If the Earth couldn't deal with it, we would have oceans covered with oil slicks, and we do not. And that's something that has to be understood. The Earth has a way of dealing with things. And it's a good point to make, because when we look at our ocean and we look at everything that has developed here on the Earth, we find that, no matter what we try to do, the Earth still manages to relentlessly push forward, even in spite of us. See, that is something that I find truly fascinating, that our world can make its way, even in spite of us. And now there's also another thing that says that, there was a phase of time here where global warming was the big thing. And I never bought into that. And the reason I didn't has to do with the methodologies by which this information was taken and gathered. Global warming was it was doomed from the beginning, because global warming isn't actually happening the way they were trying to say it was happening. There are many different studies that were done, and actually data that was taken, and the information that was gathered from these studies at times was not taken and gathered in a way that was very very organized and or correct. They actually gathered information that was really in some ways quite wrong. I'll give you a bunch of examples. I know I'm kind of beating around the bush here, but the way that it happened was when they actually started to look at the data. I'll give you an example. We were told that the Greenland glaciers were melting, and sure enough, some areas of the glaciers seemed to be losing ice mass. From space, the main feature that went into the global warming proposal, the ICAN report, was that the glacial peaks, that is, the glacial tops, seemed to be getting lower. This was from laser altimetry done from space. Well, the truth on that was more confusing than clear. But it was discovered that the Greenland glaciers were actually growing, and it was the weight of the ice that was causing Greenland to subside deeper in the crust, and that's why it looked like it was getting smaller. So it wasn't like the Greenland glaciers were. Oh, that's a really good tongue twister. Greenland glaciers were actually falling or losing mass. They were actually growing and getting heavier, and thus sinking deeper in the crust. Another one was that Mount Kilimanjaro, always seen with the ice caps on its peaks, was losing its snow. They said, "Oh no, global warming. See, Kilimanjaro has no ice anymore, has no snow cover." When the fact was, in the years preceding, 10 years preceding this, Kilimanjaro's temperature dropped 10 degrees on average. So where'd the snow go? Well, the snow went to the native people in the area deforesting the slopes. And by deforesting the slopes, they actually caused the warm air from the valleys to rise up and be able to make its way over the top, which over time melted the snow. So, that's one of those truths that we have trouble dealing with. On top of that, we looked at 42 different weather stations in China. In China, they were showing that there was a massive amount of warming. Okay, the truth was that study did not take into account urban sprawl and the fact that people were expanding outward, and where these previously remote weather stations were, there was now literally air conditioning vents which were throwing hot air directly onto measuring apparatus, and urban sprawl warming up the local area to the point where these stations were no longer valid. And not only that, there was a certain number of these stations that actually did not even exist and had been gone for years. But the data was still being quote-unquote acquired as if it was there. So that was sort of some hypocrisy going on there. So this type of thing has been, and these are all, these are all, these are. I wrote an article about this. These are all called Climate Gate, and there's Climate Gate 1, Climate Gate 2, Climate Gate 3. All dealing with people that tried to make the case, and it was all for political purposes to make sure that people changed their lives in the way they lived, whether it really mattered or not, whether it really had anything to do with it or not. The fact is, there is climate change. There's no doubt. We can see it. But whereas it's getting warmer in certain places in the United States, for instance, it's getting colder in places like Siberia. So we're seeing the landscape of temperatures change on the planet, but not all toward a trend toward warm. There's areas on the Earth that are getting more and more cold than they've ever been, and areas that have gotten more and more warm than they've ever been. It's shifting. All right, you might have noticed that winter this year extended way into March. All right, there's probably a reason for that, and maybe that reason is that, the cycle of the Earth, a long-term cycle, is being reached.
Well, a lot of people get weather and climate mixed up.
Yes, that's right.
Like,
weather.
If it's global warming, why do we get so much snow? Not realizing, warmer ocean temperatures equal more precipitation and blah blah blah, yada yada yada. But yeah, a lot of people confuse weather and climate, and it's two totally different monsters.
Right. Weather is what happens today. Climate is what happens tomorrow. And the day after, and the day after.
Tomorrow.
Uh-oh.
What time do we want to head to Connecticut?
You tell me. When do you want to go?
You tell me, because I'm following you.
Well, as early as you want.
Let's go.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I'm going, how many miles away from here are you?
I'm an hour and a half.
So what is that, 50 miles? 60 miles, let's see, highway?
I think it's 75.
Yeah. So I'm going 75 miles in the wrong direction before I head in the right direction.
Well, it depends. Some of the people out here know that what I gave you is,
Yeah. I do. That's why I'm making the trip.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be worth it to you once you have it at your place.
Yeah, can I get to 95 pretty quick from your place?
Easily.
That's
You,
what I
you
thought.
just go Route 8 south to 95,
Yeah.
and then you're there.
I'll just jump in because it being Sunday, I should be all right around New York City.
Yeah. And the George Washington Bridge in New York City is always a mess.
Yep.
But, I mean, you're going to have a flying saucer in the back of your truck. How bad could it be?
It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
Yep. I cannot wait.
Good night, Dave. Thanks for joining us.
Good night, David.
Yeah. And we're getting tired, too, so we're probably going to be signing off soon. And,
Everybody's raiding the fridge right now. They're doing their late night fridge raid. So you got 6 people in the kitchen, like literally making 7-course meals.
right now?
Yeah.
Oh, man, how can they eat this late?
I have no idea.
You know, I got to tell you, Bill prepared a meal that was just spectacular. And, I mean,
you got that. No, this one was prepared by this man right here.
oh,
Jade.
really? Oh,
Jade
dude.
made everything, and I started eating it, and I could literally hear myself getting fatter. And it was delicious.
It was. I couldn't finish it all. I felt like
Yeah.
I felt like, I was like almost ungrateful because I couldn't finish it. I had these amazing tacos, soft tacos with fresh avocado that was amazing.
So good.
And then the spaghetti with chicken. It was like a chicken parmesan with spaghetti, and the sauce tasted great, and the chicken was not, too thick in any way, and it certainly wasn't tough in any way. It was just amazing.
It's like, Keith, what did you get from your trip to New York? And all I can say is diabetes.
No, you don't have diabetes. I have diabetes.
That's funny.
Yeah, it was really good stuff.
Out of the way, fat man.
Well, I'm saying, if anything, let's see. Well, we definitely want to sleep. That's a big thing. So, what do you normally good on? 6, 7, 8, 12 hours sleep? Depends on some people.
A day like today, in the house here, it's almost 3 a.m. I would imagine that I'd probably go to 8 at the very least.
Yeah. So let's say we head towards your house around 10.
Okay,
Would that work?
that'll work fine.
Yeah.
And then we can load up the hornet-riddled Jupiter 2 for you, and you can take all my hornet nests away.
Yep. Absolutely.
There's no hornets. I'm just
We're
kidding.
gonna put
with
it
them.
on the back of the truck, and we're just gonna let the breeze take it. I'm gonna let them all loose in the Lincoln Tunnel.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Come across the George Washington.
Ow!
But yeah, my last day here. Last night here. I think everybody's last night here, pretty much, except for Heidi, right?
No, he don't do Consuela.
Yeah,
I
last
do
couple
Consuela
hours.
better.
Billapalooza. We are drawing the chalk outlines around everybody that's didn't manage to make it. We tip our hats to the ones we've lost along the way.
Yes. There's a it's sort of a festive atmosphere here at Billapalooza.
Yeah.
And this is the first time I've done Billapalooza, and that is the name. We're gonna keep it that way, and make sure all of you do. Billapalooza it shall be, and it shall always be. Billapalooza, Palooza it shall be, in the name of Bill.
In the name of Bill.
Yes.
Bill and Ma.
No more, no less.
Absolutely.
And I have to admit, whenever Bill's on here, he just has no qualm about yelling, "Ma!" And it's like, holy cow, I can't believe he does that sometimes.
Stick around, you'll hear it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure I heard it today.
Oh yeah.
And she comes in and says, "Bill, can you please move that so I don't trip and fall?" Not now,
You know-
Mom,
you know
busy.
when- you know when it's coming too, because all of a sudden you'll see Mom come in and you'll hear this, Billy.
I need you right now.
That's so great.
I need you right now,
That
Billy.
dynamic that those two have is just
Scary.
outstanding.
It's scary,
Outstanding.
but it's good.
Oh man, freaking great. So yeah,
Yes, David Brewer. It's the carbon tax. You're right. A lot of it.
So you got 2 videos in 24 hours anyway.
Yeah, I mean, maybe people will listen later. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was, learned so much.
Oh, I just talk too much.
I don't know where you keep it all.
I don't know.
Truly think you may possibly be a robot.
I just think about that.
Do you have like a photographic memory or something like that? Or just a lot of storage space?
I think it's just storage space.
Yeah. Just
I
to
do
be
have.
able to recall that information at will is just, I can't wrap my head around it.
Well, I think it's just from being so immersed in it all the time. I mean, I can sit there and talk for as long as I want to about, a singular star, because there's so much to a star. I mean, for part of getting my astronomy degree, one of my things I had to do was I actually had to build a star mathematically.
Well, I mean, most people can't remember what they did 2 hours ago, let alone the name of like half the stars in our visible universe.
Well, I mean, I don't even remember that, but
yeah, but I mean, it's just amazing.
Thanks, Deirdre.
Amazing, and I'm glad that everybody that I see in this chat has jump shipped over either from P&K or from Bill's channel. I did mod myself, Mark, while you weren't looking.
You're allowed.
Just in case.
You're allowed.
And I will give you definite names of people that would benefit your channel moderating when it does come time for you to do the live stream.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure you're going to want to keep it clean, kind of like we do for
and I
purposes
noticed,
and whatnot, so.
some of the comments needed to be, whacked here, but it wasn't so bad.
No, this has been great. It looks like by the names, it's a lot of people that.
I think we got
definitely
all of the
waiting on
best people that we want out there joined us tonight.
I think every single person on this chat is one of our moderators, or at least one of our everyday viewers. So you guys are awesome. I mean, you guys basically keep us doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
Except for that Jello guy, I'm not too sure about him. I think he might have a couple screws loose.
Well, yeah, I mean, more Jello, please. It's like, man, give that guy some freaking, Jello for crying out loud.
There they go.
There they go. They're leaving. So they were walking by the camera. So maybe, they're leaving. They're definitely leaving. Yeah, they're out of here.
Yeah. Who was that?
I don't know.
No idea.
Don't know. I have no idea.
Somebody just fell. I heard it.
You did?
Somebody just did a header.
Where?
out
Really?
Back behind us.
Oh.
So it's up to you how long you want to stream, Mark. I mean, it's.
Well, it's okay. I mean, I think we should call it a night and say that we're done for now. This was a successful night.
And if you didn't get to check out the talk from earlier, it is up on Mark's page.
Yeah,
it's a video before this one.
Courtesy of Keith, actually. He was very good at sitting there and making sure that he captured it for me, which was amazing.
Until that guy decided to sit right in front of me.
And that guy, and then of course there was that guy, Bill, who got a phone call, the only one, the whole talk. The phone rings, and of course, it's not like it's a little like beep, 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 beep. No, it had to be some kind of freaking rock song that plays really loudly, which you can hear.
Bill, the guy who's been to these conferences before that knows the deal. And guess whose phone goes off at full blast in the middle of a talk.
And then all of a sudden, as he's walking out, I said before, I said, he was, I said, Bill was that guy, as he runs out, and of course everyone laughs. So it was fine, Yeah,
it was funny.
Hi, Chris. How you doing?
Tana's on her way to sleep.
Not yet. I will be soon, though.
She's just slowly sitting there fading.
Hey, Beavis.
Oh, you haven't seen me do that bit yet, so.
So, Mark, do we have a roundabout day that you're going to start in the observatory?
I actually got the Wi-Fi unit the other day. Mm-hmm. Actually, the day you arrived, I got it later on in the afternoon.
Is that what I stole out of your mailbox?
Oh, is that what it was?
Probably.
No wonder I didn't get it.
You're going to have to order another one.
And it works, and I had to work out the kinks of it because the first time I tried it, and I tried to align my telescope, I wanted to point it at Vega, which you guys have been seeing all night long on the screen. At least you were until it wandered off. But my telescope pointed down south, down under the Earth. So in other words, it went in the wrong way, and it was a problem with using the Wi-Fi at the same time as trying to get the scope aligned. So I have it aligned now and parked in a alignment position. And when I turn it on, and get it, make sure the alignment is good, I can then turn on the Wi-Fi and use it. The benefit is that when you get to an object, I'll be able to tell you all the things about the object, like the galaxy, the planetary nebula, the open cluster of stars. See, we were born in a cluster of stars too. I mean, and some people think that we were born. Some researchers think that based on the motions of the stars in our local neighborhood, that perhaps maybe our sun may have been born at the same time as the Big Dipper stars, and we're part of the same group that migrated
it had
apart.
to be. If there is 7 civilizations living in that sun, it had to be born right about the same time. There's no doubt about it. Pure, cold, hard facts.
I was actually told, and what he's referring to is I was told by a guy that was supposedly pretty respectable, that 7 civilizations were living inside the sun. And I think I wanted to tell him that he had like 4 civilizations living inside his head.
Yeah.
Okay, and it was just like, wow. He was a very reputable guy, and I think as he's gotten older, maybe he's starting to lose it just a little bit.
And maybe take it off the deep end.
Yeah, gone off the deep end just a little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Poor fellow, but ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I'm gonna call it. We're gonna say goodnight.
Mark is gonna
for
call
now,
it, and I will say that this is the last time you will be hearing me live from Billapalooza. Next time you hear this voice, it will be back on the home front with my nice, comfortable microphone and my nice, comfortable chair
in his
and
EIB network studio.
And my nice, comfortable cheese sandwich. What the hell?
Thank you guys for doing all that you do and for letting us be there with you. That was awesome.
Yeah, we had a rough start to it. As I said, at least me and Paul did get one good stream in. Too bad it had to be really early morning, but hey, that's the cards we were dealt, and we did get it in. And Paul literally just texted me. Well, it's been a while now, but he was literally pulling into Jacksonville, Florida at 8:30. So he was booking because he left this morning from here. So
yeah.
He was expecting himself to be home at midnight in Miami. So if that's the case, I'm gonna say after recovery, downtime, blah blah blah. I'm gonna say probably Wednesday. We're looking Wednesday or Thursday. You can probably look for a stream if we decide to do it. If not, we might just take the week off and start the next week. But once again, Mark has stuff coming. I'm pretty sure as soon as he gets that stuff set up, he'll be rocking and rolling, and I might stop in and peek in on that a little bit.
Yeah, I almost started a stream the other night when I was in there, but I ended up having alignment issues with the scope, and I didn't do it. And the worst part was I actually imaged a galaxy called the Sombrero Galaxy, which is Messier 104, and it's an element in a very popular catalog. And I imaged it, but I noticed these flashes in the sky that I saw, and I recognized those as lightning flashes illuminating the water vapor in the atmosphere from a great distance away, like more than 100 more miles. So I went outside and I looked for these clouds that were issuing the lightning, and I could see them on the horizon. And I realized, okay, because I opened the observatory, they're coming right the heck for me. And sure enough, they did. And within about 40 minutes, they reached us and pelted us with a storm of biblical proportions. And when I went into the observatory later to make sure it was all okay, I was surprised to find there was no water inside whatsoever, even with the heavy winds and everything. So it was great. And I have a tie-down system so that the dome was actually secured to the building so it couldn't fly off. Because remember, the dome turns around. That means it has to be able to fit on top fairly loosely, which means that it has to be able to, it can come on and off. So I actually made sure that it was tied down, and it was fine. So,
do you have a chair that you sit in that spins around with the telescope?
I thought about that, actually, but the problem is the pier is isolated from the rest of the building. So it goes through a hole in the floor, and I have high-strength rubber matting that I put on the floor, and I cut a round hole for the pier to go through. and there's a little gap so that you don't get any vibration even from the floor on the pier. So I can't attach anything to the pier. I would actually have to have made like a track in the floor, and that becomes a tripping hazard. So I thought about it, but I realized that would be a little too elaborate, and because the telescope eyepiece isn't something that I view out of. Okay, I actually watch a television monitor to see what's on the screen, because this is going to be a remote observatory. This is going to be an observatory where I can actually operate through the internet. So it's going to be unmanned in its final state. And we're going to be doing all the observation, all the touring, and all of the teaching outside of the observatory. And that's going to be probably after it gets to Arizona, because it's going to be in Connecticut for about 2 years, and then I'm going to get the whole thing and pack it up and move it to Arizona if I can get land out there that's appropriate. And there's plenty. It's freely available. A lot of it's very, very available, so it's going to be great. But I'll be letting you know.
Yeah, please do.
And there you have it.
All right. Well, folks...
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming on board with us tonight, and I will be back to you in the coming week or so with a live stream. I'm fairly sure that I'll be able to get it done for then.
And I'm excited about it. I will be there. I hope you guys will too. And live from Billapalooza 2017.
More like Sleepy from Billapalooza.
Oh, I know. It's just great.
Yeah.
But we have a nice little drive tomorrow, and then back to normal, I guess.
Yeah. Live from Billapalooza on 5/21/2017 comes Keith and Mark on the EIB network. The EIB network. Hey, Rocky, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat. Nothing up my sleeve. Presto. Must have had the wrong hat.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you later. Everybody be safe. Pay attention to this
You guys.
channel. Definitely want to see what's coming up. All right. Mark has finally freaking lost it. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you later.
Good night.
Be safe.
Thank you.